Chapter 544. People would often compare a pearl to a young girl's skin. People would often praise a young girl's skin as white as a pearl and very lustrous. Then, what does a pearl-like white skin look like? If it was the current Noah, he would definitely be able to answer this question properly. Because a delicate body with such luster was now presented in front of Noah without any concealment, giving Noah the best reference. Although the delicate body was young, the curves from the waist to the buttocks were unexpectedly attractive. Although the front of the delicate body didn't rise and fall much, it was already quite eye-catching. Needless to say, the skin of the delicate body was like a pearl in the truest sense, and it even reflected the light, making it exceptionally beautiful. The delicate body had already reached an incredible degree. If there was really something in this world that could be described as a heavenly work, then there would definitely be a place for it. And when such a delicate body was presented in front of a man without a trace of concealment, what would that man's mood be like? Noah didn't know how others would feel, but Noah himself completely felt that his mind was completely blank for a moment, as if his thoughts were suddenly blocked somewhere, and he couldn't turn around anymore. This situation was finally broken when Athena calmly put her foot into the bath that Noah was soaking in. Splash! With another splash, Athena entered the bathtub and soaked herself in the water. And it was not far away from Noah. Even with the cover of the steam, Athena's delicate body was still faintly visible in Noah's eyes, which made Noah completely lose his calm. What are you doing? Are you surprised? Athena looked up, her eyes were as calm as usual. Speaking of which, humans seem to have some scruples about the intimate contact between men and women, but in some places, there is also the saying of honesty. I don't think you don't even know about this. I know, but whether you know or not has nothing to do with the current situation. Noah's mouth twitched. The problem is, even if you want to be honest with me, you still need a reason. Why do you want to be honest with me? Strictly speaking, I don't have a reason to be honest with you. I just want to experience your feelings. Athena tilted her head and said. As the goddess of wisdom, I know that when humans are cleansing themselves, a popular saying, their vigilance is usually lower than usual. There might not even be a trace of vigilance. Just now, you were so careless that you didn't even notice me approaching you. That's one of the reasons, right? Hearing Athena's words, Noah was speechless. To be precise, Athena was right. No one would be on guard when taking a bath, right? Noah was indeed too comfortable. In addition, the night view of Nabali was really good. Under the combination of the two, and because Athena didn't approach with malice, hostility, or killing intent, Noah didn't notice Athena's approach. There was nothing he could do about it, right? But Athena herself seemed to be very dissatisfied with Noah's performance. She was so dissatisfied that she didn't even hesitate to experience it herself. To be able to make the goddess Athena so concerned, should it be Noah's honor? From this, it could also be seen how satisfied Athena was with Noah's performance in the past. She was so satisfied that a trace of carelessness this time made Athena so dissatisfied to this extent. It seems that under the influence of the god of disobedience, Athena, who was once the queen of the divine realm, seemed to occupy more of the goddess of war's divinity. That's why she was so emotionally affected by Noah, this so-called fated opponent. Understanding this, Noah was speechless. Forget it, it's not like I don't have this kind of experience anyway. In the world of the dark bullet, Noah had the experience of bathing with the children of the cursed child he adopted many times. In the world of absolute dual blades, he also saw Julie and Lilith's bodies many times. He even had the most intimate contact with Mira and Lysanna, so he didn't panic because of being honest with Athena. Of course, when he thought of the famous goddess Athena soaking in the same bath as him, Noah still felt a little dizzy. Noah could only suppress the impetuosity in his heart and smiled bitterly. Then, after experiencing it personally, as the goddess of wisdom, do you understand anything? Understand what? Athena glanced at Noah and said such a sentence. Sure enough, although I can understand, I still can't understand why you humans feel comfortable soaking in such hot water and even relax to the point of losing your vigilance. This also proved that Athena was indeed a goddess and not a human. Even if her appearance was beautiful and her body was seductive, Athena was still Athena. There was a fundamental difference between the values of a goddess and a human. Thinking of this, Noah realized that being able to talk to Athena, the god of disobedience, was indeed quite an incredible thing. Perhaps this was the karma that Athena talked about. Because of unknown karma, Noah could have such an incredible experience and way of getting along with Athena, who was a goddess. It was really strange. It was just that Athena was not like a human and would feel satisfied because of this. As the former queen of the divine realm, and also as a goddess, there was only one way to satisfy Athena. Battle. Give Athena a battle that could soothe the arrogance in her heart caused by Bodhisattva. In this way, the high and mighty queen of the divine realm, the famous goddess of wisdom in Greek mythology, would be truly satisfied. Noah had to fight with Athena sooner or later, so he had to be mentally prepared. This was not only for Noah himself, but also for Athena. Athena didn't know if it was because she felt Noah's determination, but she looked straight into Noah's eyes with an intoxicating smile on her face. You showed a good look just now, Noah Doria. Is that so? Noah smiled indifferently. Are you going to say that it's the look of a warrior? No, although there is a warrior part in it, it's more about responsibility. Athena seemed to be attracted by Noah's look just now. She slowly approached Noah until she was in front of Noah. She looked up at Noah with sparkling eyes. That's right, that's the look of a real man. Noah suddenly became silent and sighed. I just realized that you really need me to be the one to defeat you. Hearing this, Athena revealed a joyful expression. Do you feel the same as me? Sure enough, you and I are fated enemies. In other words, Athena had the same feeling as Noah. She felt that only she could defeat Noah. That's why she regarded Noah as her so-called fated enemy. I don't know if I'm your fated enemy. Noah fearlessly met Athena's gaze. It's just that, if you have to choose one person to defeat you, that person must be me. I just realized this. That's enough. Athena's joyful expression slowly turned into a satisfied look. With a splash, she stood up from the water, revealing her naked body in front of Noah. This concubine will taste the karma between us bit by bit. Noah Dole, before one of us disappears from this world, this concubine will not allow you to die a miserable death at the hands of others. We're the same. Noah narrowed his eyes. There was no blasphemy in his eyes toward Athena's naked body, and he responded in a dignified manner. Before I defeat you, don't die in the hands of other god-slayers, Athena. Athena took a deep look at Noah and gave him a faint smile. Then, she turned around and disappeared into the pool with a surge of darkness. At the same time, the clothes that Athena dropped on the edge of the bath also disappeared. Seeing this, Noah smiled helplessly. She's really a goddess who appears and disappears like a ghost. Chapter 545. After coming out of the bathhouse, Noah couldn't find Athena. This goddess didn't seem to plan to act with Noah, at least not when Noah was living a normal life with Noah. Therefore, even if Noah returned to Diana's old bookstore, he still couldn't sense Athena's aura. However, Noah wasn't worried. No matter what, she was still the famous goddess of wisdom. Noah didn't think that Athena would secretly gloat when things were developing in a bad direction when forming an alliance with him. That didn't match the goddess aesthetics at all. So, Athena would definitely appear at the most critical moment, right? Noah was very confident about this. Perhaps, this was also because of the fate that Athena mentioned. However, Noah didn't expect that accidents would always happen when people didn't expect them. Even if there were no problems with Athena, it didn't mean that there wouldn't be problems elsewhere. Such an accident and problem had already happened before Noah returned to the old bookstore. When Noah returned to the second floor of the old bookstore, he thought that Erica, Liliana, and Diana would be busy in the underground ruins of the Temple of Hera. Who would have thought that when he returned, Erica and Liliana were sitting at the desk in silence with solemn expressions? Seeing this, Noah knew that something had happened. "You're back." Sure enough, as soon as she saw Noah coming up from downstairs, Erica handed him a piece of paper. "Then, take a look at this." Hearing this, Noah went forward without saying a word, took the paper from Erica's hand, and confirmed the content on it. There was a line of small words written in Italian on the paper: "I'm very interested in the god relic that the witches of Nabli worked so hard to transport here hundreds of years ago. Therefore, I'm here to express my intention to borrow it in a simple way. I'll return it in a few days, but the date is uncertain. Please understand, Alexander Gascoigne." Seeing the signature at the end of the paper in his hand, Noah understood immediately. Alexander Gascoigne. Those who were familiar with this name also knew that this person had another famous name: Black Prince Yerek. In other words, the paper in Noah's hand was left behind by Yerek, who was also a god slayer. From the contents, Noah could only deduce one conclusion. The divine pillar of Hera was taken away by Yerek. That's it. Liliana sighed. Who would have thought that the Black Prince would commit such a thieving act? "Lily, that's not right," Erica corrected her. "The Black Prince has done similar things several times, right?" "That seems to be the case." Liliana smiled bitterly. "The Black Prince has forcibly borrowed spirit treasures and god relics from magic societies all over Europe several times with the excuse of, 'I'm a little interested and I want to investigate.' That's not all. Whenever the Black Prince has his eyes on something, if it's heavily guarded, he'll send out a notice and steal it. If there's no stage for him to show off, he'll just leave an IOU and take it away. If he finds something particularly important, he won't even return it. He'll display it in his subordinate association, the Wongley factory, and keep it." Erica shrugged. After all, the Black Prince is a figure who calls himself an explorer and an adventurer. As a god slayer, he doesn't only know how to fight gods. He'll also challenge mysteries and dangerous things as the meaning of life. It's a headache. Hearing Erica and Liliana's complaints, Noah sighed. Could it be that the Black Bronze Cross and the Black Bronze Cross have also been stolen by the Black Prince? As long as it's a famous magic association in Europe, there's basically no one that hasn't been patronized by that lord. Even some not-so-famous magic associations that have hidden good stuff have been patronized by the Black Prince. Erica complained, which was rare. After all, it's the most powerful monster bandit in history. It can't be helped. In terms of combat strength, Yerek was not particularly outstanding among the 7 current god slayers. At least, he was not as outstanding as Luo Hao and Warban. However, if the field of victory was limited to stealing, then it would be Black Prince Yerek's complete victory. The Black Prince has the authority of lightning speed. He also has another authority that allows him to create a maze to trap his opponents. At the same time, he also knows magic and is good at using tactics. Liliana recalled Yerek's deeds. Because of these factors, it's not an exaggeration to say that the Black Prince is the most powerful monster bandit in history. The most important thing is that if he has something he wants, the King of God Slayers will not care about the means at all, even if it's stealing. Erica finished these words in one breath and spread her hands helplessly. Now that the Black Prince has stolen the divine pillar of Hera, what should we do? This sentence made Liliana speechless. Noah repeatedly checked the contents of the paper in his hand, and Alice's words automatically came to his mind. The Black Prince Yerek has a good relationship with Lord Guinevere, and he is also very interested in the last king that Lord Guinevere has been looking for. If he knows what Lord Guinevere is doing now, he will definitely go there, right? As a matter of fact, Yerek had indeed come and stolen the divine pillar of Hera, which Guinevere was concerned about, which was likely related to the hero of steel that was about to appear in Nabali. Presumably, he had done such a thing because of Guinevere. So, what should Noah do now? Although he is a rare genius among the god slayers, Alice also said that the man has the same problem as the god slayers. Once he has something he wants to do, he will not care about his surroundings. He is also a demon king. Noah crushed the paper in his hand. If he stole the divine pillar of Hera because of Guinevere and steel, then he will definitely not solve the curse power gathered on the divine pillar of Hera. It is more likely that he will wait until the divine pillar of Hera has gathered enough curse power and witnessed the changes of the divine pillar of Hera with his own eyes. We have the same idea. Erica nodded. The Black Prince Yerek will definitely not solve the problem on the divine pillar of Hera. Now, Diana has already gone out to contact her subordinates in Nabali to find the whereabouts of the divine pillar of Hera, Liliana quickly said. There is now a huge amount of curse power gathered on the divine pillar of Hera. Even the Black Prince Yerek can't block it all. It is only a matter of time before he finds the location of the divine pillar of Hera. The key is whether this sooner or later is later or early. Noah shook his head. I just hope that Diana can find the whereabouts of the divine pillar of Hera before it gathers enough curse power. Although he said that, Noah's eyes flashed with a frightening light. What? Erica, who noticed this, smiled sweetly. Are you provoked by the Black Prince Yerek? I don't have that much free time to compete with that kind of guy with a twisted personality. Noah glanced at Erica and said this. It's just that stealing from under my nose and leaving this kind of paper made me want to teach him a lesson. Now, the Black Prince Yerek had done the same thing as Warban. If Yerek really wanted the divine pillar of Hera, he would have come to negotiate with Noah honestly. Perhaps, Noah would have pushed this trouble to Yerek. However, just like how Warban had directly kidnapped Erica and Liliana, Yerek had also directly stolen the divine pillar of Hera. He had no intention of talking to Noah at all and did as he pleased. So, did Noah still need to think about what he should do? The only thing he could do was to teach the other party a lesson. That's why I said you're not as calm as you think you are. You're too impulsive. Liliana's head seemed to hurt even more. No, we have to let Diana disperse the residents of Nabali in time. The Black Prince Yerek, the god Guinevere, the hero of steel, the snake goddess. Erica concluded with this sentence. The battle royale 3 months ago. Perhaps it will happen again in Italy. That's hard to say. Chapter 546. The next day, just as the sun rose and the sky became bright, Noah woke up. After washing up, Noah walked out of his room and wandered around the library-like living room on the second floor of Diana's second-hand bookstore. The books on the first floor of Diana's second-hand bookstore were extremely ordinary, but there were several bookshelves on the second floor, and almost all of them were books related to gods. Noah, who had nothing to do, stayed in the room and flipped through the books casually, supplementing the knowledge of various mythological systems that he lacked. His life was quite fulfilling. Liliana woke up earlier than Noah, and even dragged Erica out of bed. Erica, who was used to lazing in bed, reluctantly brought her along to meet up with Diana and continue to search for the whereabouts of the divine pillar of Hera. Noah, who had nothing to do, had offered to help last night. But both Erica and Liliana felt that if they needed the king to do something like searching for something, they would really be useless. Therefore, under the objections of Erica and Liliana, Noah could only compromise and leave the task of searching for the divine pillar of Hera to Erica and Liliana, while he read the books in Diana's shop to enrich his knowledge. Perhaps it could be used as a preparation for the sword in the upcoming battle. Erica and Liliana must be thinking the same, right? They felt that instead of wasting Noah's talents to search for the divine pillar of Hera, it would be better for him to supplement his knowledge of various mythological systems and prepare for the sword that the warrior transformed into. That way, it would be the greatest help for the upcoming battle. Noah, who had no objections, let Erica and Liliana do what they wanted, while he stayed alone in the second-hand bookstore, flipping through all kinds of knowledge related to gods. However, there was a lot of knowledge related to gods. Since ancient times, the number of various mythological systems was innumerable, not to mention the knowledge of the various gods under each mythological system. Even though Noah had an extraordinary memory and comprehension ability, he dared not say that he had learned all the knowledge of the mythological system in 3 months. Even Erica and Liliana, the two prodigies who had been learning the knowledge of God since they were young, dared not say so. So now, Noah basically only remembered the knowledge of the gods in those famous mythological systems. Even so, Noah's mind was filled with a lot of divine knowledge, including the most famous mythological systems such as Greek, Roman, Norse, and Celtic mythology. As for the mythological systems outside Europe, he only roughly remembered a few of the more famous ones. If one wanted to learn all the knowledge of this world's mythological system, even Noah would have to spend a few years, right? And Noah didn't have that much time to learn all the mythological systems in the world, so he could only learn the more famous ones first. In this way, Noah was immersed in the world of books. He read from morning to afternoon, and it was almost evening. It wasn't until the sky began to slowly turn red that Erica and Liliana came back, bringing good news to Noah. We found the stone pillar of Hera. In the corner of the east coast of the port of Naples, a volcano was located here. Mount Vesuvius. It was an active volcano known as the most dangerous volcano in Europe and one of the most famous volcanoes in the world. Now, Noah was at the bottom of this volcano. He looked up at the magnificent volcano, frowned, and looked at Erica and Liliana. The stone pillar of Hera is on this volcano. This sentence was basically nonsense. Because when he came to the bottom of Mount Vesuvius, Noah could clearly feel the extraordinary curse power on the mountain. The feeling of this curse power was almost exactly the same as the curse power gathered on the stone pillar of Hera. Therefore, Noah was sure that the stone pillar of Hera was on this volcano. However, Noah still said this sentence that was purely nonsense. There was no other reason than that the volcano in front of him was too strange. At the top of the volcano, a thick layer of dark clouds shrouded it. Bolts of lightning flashed from the clouds from time to time, as if they could fall on the volcano at any time. It looked very dangerous. And around the volcano, there was a layer of extremely thick fog that shrouded the entire volcano. One could only vaguely see the surface of the volcano that had turned very red due to the excessive iron content, but one couldn't see the exact situation inside. How could a volcano have such a strange appearance? It was precisely because of this that Noah had such a big question. Question 1. When did Mount Vesuvius become like this? Question 2. Since the volcano has become like this, how did the stone pillar of Hera appear inside? No matter who it was, if they saw the volcano in front of them, they would definitely have the same question as Noah. That's probably the masterpiece of the Black Prince Yerek, right? Erica pointed at Mount Vesuvius. The reason why Mount Vesuvius became like this should be because of that Lord's authority that turned it into a maze. A maze? Noah's brows furrowed deeper and deeper, and he looked at Mount Vesuvius that was surrounded by fog and covered by thunderclouds. Could it be that this is the legendary Great Maze? The Black Prince Yerek was not only the user of seraphic speed, but also the creator of the maze. Noah had heard about this before. It was said that Yerek had once killed the god of earth and maze, Minos. From this god, Yerek had usurped the authority of the Great Maze, which was called by the Great Maze by the Sage Council, headed by Alice. It was the authority that could create a maze anywhere. Whether it was on the ground or underground, as long as Yerek was willing, he could use this authority to create a maze. Moreover, using this authority, Yerek could not only create a maze, but he could also turn an existing place into a maze. Whether it was a mansion, a building, an underground tunnel, a forest, or even an ordinary thick fog, it did not matter. Yerek could use the authority of the great maze to turn it into a place that could confuse people and become a dangerous area. The reason why Mount Vesuvius became like this must be because Yerek hid inside with the stone pillar of Hera and used the authority of the great maze to turn the volcano into a maze. With that layer of thick fog, no matter what method we use to go in, we will definitely come out in the end. Liliana showed a troubled expression. In addition, there are thunderclouds above the volcano. We can't use a helicopter to fly to the top of the volcano. Even Diana can't do anything about it, so we could only invite you here. If you want to deal with authority, you can only use the same authority in return. Humans can't find a way to resist the volcano now. Erica looked at Noah. And your authority has as many changes as Wellerslana's. Can you find a way to resist the great maze? That's not a problem. Noah slowly relaxed his furrowed brows. After pondering for a while, he ordered, "Let's do it this way. How about this? I'll go into the labyrinth. Erica, Lily, ask Diana to withdraw all the explorers. They can't go in anyway, so just stay around and wait for orders. If you find anything wrong, decide whether you should intervene or retreat." Understood. Erica and Liliana immediately nodded in response and retreated. Noah raised his head again and stared at Mount Vesuvius, which was covered in thick fog and had thunderclouds in the sky. A sneer gradually appeared on his face. "I'd like to see what tricks you're going to play, Yerek." With that, Noah closed his eyes, and the stone plate connected to the 10 patterns appeared in his mind. "I am the conqueror who can defeat 1,000 with 100, 10,000 with 1,000, and 10,000 with 10,000. Now, for me, who is on the side of justice, please shine brightly and bestow me with divine power." In Noah's mind, one of the 10 patterns on the outline of the stone plate lit up. It was a pattern depicting lightning. After using the thunder incarnation, Noah's body suddenly released a large amount of lightning. He turned into a dazzling bolt of lightning and rushed into the sky. He rushed into the flashing thunderclouds and disappeared without a trace. Chapter 547. In the sharp sound of the air breaking, Noah, who had transformed into lightning, soared into the sky, and then plunged into the thunderclouds on top of Mount Vesuvius. In an instant, he blended with the lightning in the thunderclouds and flew forward like a real thunderbolt. Of course, although it was said to be like a real thunderbolt, Noah could not achieve the speed of a real thunderbolt except for using the incarnation of thunderbolt to transform his body into a bolt of lightning in the true sense. After all, moving in space was limited by many factors. External factors such as resistance, wind, pressure, gravity, centripetal force, and centrifugal force would hinder the movement itself, so even if Noah transformed into lightning, he still could not achieve the speed of a real thunderbolt. It was precisely because of this reason that Laxus, who could also transform into lightning, could not achieve the speed of a real thunderbolt. Jalal's speed seemed to be the same as a meteor, but in fact, it was also affected by external factors and could not achieve the speed of a real meteor. If one wanted to achieve the speed of a real thunderbolt, only the incarnation of Phoenix could use the authority of speed to do it. Because the so-called speed did not refer to the ability to go from point A to point B at high speed, but the ability to substantially reduce the movement time from point A to point B, this ability itself did not represent speed, but represented the control of time itself. Therefore, people who used the authority of speed could enter the world of speed where their senses were super-accelerated and the external world was super-decelerated. They were not affected by any external factors and could achieve the speed of a real thunderbolt. Similar to Noah's Phoenix, Yerek's lightning spark also had the same characteristics. By transforming himself into lightning, and then entering the world of speed, where he was not affected by any external factors, and moving, Yerek could achieve the speed of a real thunderbolt. Therefore, in terms of movement speed, the phoenix and lightning spark were much faster than the thunder incarnation that could only transform into lightning, and it was not just a little faster. If he wanted to reach the top of the volcano quickly, then Noah should have used the phoenix incarnation. However, Noah's thunder incarnation was not to use the speed when he transformed into lightning, but to transform himself into lightning. Boom! In the surging thunderclouds, bolts of lightning were mixed with terrifying sounds of thunder. As though they were trying to expel foreign enemies, all of them twisted and flashed through the space, hitting Noah, who had transformed into lightning again and again. If Noah still had an ordinary body, he would have been seriously injured even if he didn't die after being struck by those bolts of lightning. However, after transforming into lightning, the lightning and the thundercloud could not harm the same lightning at all. In addition, when using the thunder incarnation, he could also gain the ability to control lightning. Noah passed through the thundercloud almost unscathed and arrived in the sky above the Vesuvius volcano. From here, Noah could clearly see that apart from the small space above Mount Vesuvius that was covered by thunderclouds, the rest of the sky was clear. In other words, the thundercloud itself was not attracted by the power to control the sky, storm, or lightning. It was a setting set by the power of Yerek's great labyrinth. It could also be said that it was a trap, an obstacle, and could not be controlled by Yerek himself. It was also because of this that Noah knew that he could not use the storm incarnation to disperse the thundercloud, nor could he blow away the fog that shrouded Mount Vesuvius. Therefore, he chose to use the thunder incarnation to directly rush in. Maintaining his lightning incarnation, Noah hid in the thundercloud and looked down at the top of Mount Vesuvius below. At the edge of the crimson volcanic crater, on a rocky ground, a stone pillar stood there, gathering an astonishing amount of curse power. It released a beam of light, causing the curse power to soar into the sky. Impressively, it was the stone pillar of Hera. Chi! The lightning hiding in the thunderclouds suddenly burst out from the dark clouds and fell from the sky like a bolt of lightning. It landed on the edge of the volcano, in front of the stone pillar of Hera. When it landed, it scattered and condensed into a human form. The moment he landed, Noah cast his gaze in the direction of the divine pillar of Hera, and looked at the figure standing in front of the stone pillar. Oh! You're already here. Accompanied by such a deep and calm voice, a tall and straight man turned around and met Noah's gaze. You're a lot earlier than I expected. I thought the great labyrinth could delay you a little, but I didn't expect you to directly rush into the thundercloud. Should I say that you're worthy of being called the God Slayer? Do you need me to return those words to you word for word? Noah looked at the man standing in front of the divine pillar of Hera, who exuded a rational and cold temperament, and responded indifferently with a calm face. Transforming one of the world's most famous volcanoes directly into a labyrinth, that's something only the God Slayer can do, right? I think this level is still acceptable. The man laughed mockingly. Compared to the other races who only know how to destroy, isn't this extremely creative power great? It's just a change of method to destroy. Aren't you going to admit that it's destruction? Noah curled his lips. Changing the original volcano into something completely different, making it lose its original function. It's just a disguised form of destruction. Hearing this, the man, Yerek, narrowed his eyes and stared at Noah, as if he wanted to get to know him again. His eyes swept back and forth across Noah's body, and after a while, he opened his mouth. What a surprise! I thought that besides me, no one among the God Slayers would engage in a verbal confrontation with others, and every word was rational. I'm really surprised. Although I can understand your idea of equating the God Slayers with the beast, I need to remind you, Yerek, you are also one of them, Noah said to Yerek with a half-smile. Of course, I also heard that you have always thought that you are an exception among all the God Slayers, and I know that you don't want to be compared to other God Slayers, so that you can show your uniqueness and rationality. Unfortunately, even if the beast can recite the Bible, it is still a beast, and after all, it is impossible to become a devout believer. What do you think? Is that so? Yerek retorted, not to be outdone. If that's the case, I remember that you are also a part of this beast, right? So, awareness and whatnot were already there when I decided to be a beast, Noah said without changing his expression. Since you have already become a wolf, then don't wear the coat of sheep's skin. I have this idea, but as my predecessor, you seem to have a different point of view from me. You are so attached to this coat of clothing. There should be many people around you who say that you don't have self-awareness, right? TSK. Yerek was obviously speechless. It seemed that Noah was right. It is a good thing to be able to calmly accept your uniqueness, but it is different when you add in the rumors of wantonly destruction as if nothing has happened. You don't have the self-awareness of causing trouble to the people around you. Sure enough, you are also a God Slayer. Same here, Noah replied unhurriedly. Undoubtedly, you have the awareness that your actions will cause trouble to the people around you, but you do it without hesitation. You are just an awkward God Slayer, don't you think so? Suddenly, Noah and Yerek's eyes met in midair and burst into fierce sparks. In some ways, Noah and Yerek were indeed similar. As God Slayers, both Noah and Yerek had enough strategy and rationality in addition to the warrior part, and they also had the values of a normal person. However, Noah was the type who would not hesitate once he decided to do something. He was the type who did not care about trifles. Yerek was the type who would not hesitate once he decided to do something. He was the type who would do things his own way. How should it be said? Both of them were very unique and much more rational than the rest of their kind, but there was no doubt that they were still the kings of the God Slayers. The difference was that Noah had this self-awareness and accepted it calmly. He would not deny it, but Yerek seemed to care a lot about what others thought of him. He chose to avoid it and firmly refused to admit that he was the same type as the rest of his kind. Therefore, unknowingly, Yerek was more than one level weaker. Chapter 548. Yerek had always been a smart person. Although his personality was a little twisted, as the only one among the current God Slayers who completely carried out the intellectual style, Yerek did indeed have the wisdom and rationality that the other God Slayers did not have. Therefore, although he did not want to admit it, Yerek realized two facts in his brief exchange of words with Noah. 1. His fellow God Slayer, who had only reincarnated for about 3 months, had the ability to strategize and rationality no less than his. 2. Because he was aware that his identity as a God Slayer was different from others, he was extremely special, and he was very troublesome. If he continued to be stubborn when confronting someone who admitted everything without any guilt, in the end, the only one who would lose would definitely be Yerek. That was to say, unlike Noah, Yerek did not verbally admit that he was the same type as the other God Slayers, but in fact, he already felt guilty. Therefore, if he continued to argue about this, it would be fine if his opponent was someone else, but if his opponent's wisdom and rationality were no less than his own, then Yerek would be under a lot of pressure. Realizing this, no matter how unwilling he was, the rational part of Yerek's heart advised him not to continue. Therefore, Yerek effortlessly changed the topic. Although it's a question you already know the answer to, let me ask. Why did you not hesitate to break into my great maze and come here? You're right. This is indeed a question you already know the answer to. It's also a very stupid question. It doesn't seem like a question you would ask. Noah shrugged and threw these words without holding back. Have you ever seen a person who didn't chase after something was stolen? But if I remember correctly, this thing should belong to the witches of Nabali, right? Yerek said matter-of-factly. I don't remember this thing being your possession. Then think of me as a young man with a strong sense of justice who chased after someone who stole something. Noah turned his body and looked directly at Yurek. So, can you give it back? A strong sense of justice. Yurek said sarcastically. If I say no, will you obediently go back and pretend that you didn't see this? Then I'm sorry, but I have to tell you a piece of bad news. Noah's face was calm. You stole the holy pillar of Hera to lure Guinevere out, or perhaps you're interested in steal. Unfortunately, Guinevere invited me. There's no room for you here, Your Highness Black Prince. Unfortunately, I'm the kind of man who will prepare a stage for his debut, Yurek said slowly. So, the negotiation failed, right? Negotiation. Noah raised his head and looked at Yurek. His eyes gradually lit up. You didn't negotiate with me before I stole the divine pillar of Hera. Now that you're talking about negotiation, I'll tell you whether or not you made a mistake in doing this. As soon as he said those words, something that no one could understand happened. Pause. Like a mirage, Noah and Yurek's figures suddenly disappeared at almost the same time. At some point in time, Noah had replaced Yurek's position and stood in front of the divine pillar of Hera. Yurek suddenly appeared on a rock not far away, and his body was still flickering with traces of electricity. I see. Noah turned his head and looked in Yurek's direction as if he understood something. Is this your godly speed? I've heard that you have the same god speed authority as me, but I didn't expect you to be so proficient in this power. Yurek's expression was slightly surprised. You know, this ability is very troublesome. It was indeed troublesome. Because there was no interference from external factors, he could increase his speed unscrupulously, allowing himself to reach the level of God speed. In such a state of super high speed, it was impossible to make accurate attacks. In other words, when entering the world of God speed, the person who used God speed would also lose the ability to attack. This problem wasn't difficult to solve. Just like when Noah fought Tony, he could use God speed to move to the desired position and then release the God speed in an instant to launch an attack. However, in addition to this, the authority of God speed also brought about other problems. The reason why humans couldn't achieve the true meaning of God speed was not only because of external factors, but also because of physical limitations. The human body couldn't support such super high speed movements. Therefore, using God speed would also bring a serious burden to the body, and even cause many negative effects. In the state of God speed, we will be super accelerated, and the surroundings will be super decelerated. That way, our heart rate, blood flow, and even the nerve transmission in our brain will be super accelerated. If something goes wrong, not only will our lifespan be shortened, but we will also collapse due to the difference in the flow of time around us. This is an ability that is both convenient and dangerous, Yurek explained with assurance. Therefore, the user of God speed can only control the time of use of God speed and pay attention to not overuse the ability, or like me. Saying this, the electric light on Yurek's body surged, and his body turned into a bolt of lightning. Directly abandoning the human body, naturally there won't be any burden on the body. After saying this, Yurek, who had turned into a bolt of lightning, disappeared from the space. It happened almost in an instant. A bolt of lightning abruptly appeared in front of Noah and condensed into a human form. Yurek held a sharp pen in his hand and directly stabbed at Noah's chest. However, in the next moment, Yurek was stunned. The sharp fountain pen pierced through the air. Noah, who had taken a big step to the right without anyone noticing, looked at Yurek mockingly. In the next second, he clenched his fist and punched. This punch was so fast that it couldn't be described with words. That was because Noah had activated the Phoenix incarnation, turning this punch into a Godspeed punch. Although it was impossible to accurately attack while in the state of seraphic speed, if he was facing a motionless target and didn't move himself, then he could use the phoenix incarnation in the instant of the attack, and this seraphic speed punch would naturally not deviate from its path. Crackle. Unfortunately, this Godspeed punch didn't hit Yurek's body, but Yurek, who had suddenly turned into a bolt of lightning, hit the bolt of lightning, and caused a burst of electric shock. Then, the bolt of lightning disappeared. When it reappeared, Yurek, who had returned to his human form, was standing on the rock with a deep frown. You can see through my Godspeed. In the state of Godspeed, the human eye couldn't track it at all. But just now, Noah had indeed avoided Yurek's attack. So that's how it is. Yurek's expression became solemn. Do you also have the mind's eye skill like Salvador Doni's? Doni's mind's eye could also see through Godspeed. Those who immersed themselves in the practice of martial arts and reached the highest level could generally practice such a skill. For people like Doni and Luo, how to be able to see through Godspeed was not surprising. Unfortunately, although I also learned some combat skills, I didn't put in all my effort like Doni, so I don't know the mind's eye skill. Noah bluntly replied. However, my senses are very sharp. Even if I can't see through your Godspeed, I can still detect your approach. Then, the next step would be easy. Relying on his sensing ability to detect Yurek's approach, Noah only needed to wait for the moment Yurek launched an attack. After all, Godspeed couldn't support the user's precise attack, so Yurek had to release the Godspeed at the moment of attack. Taking advantage of this moment, Noah could rely on his superb sensing ability to dodge in advance. Only when Yurek released the Godspeed could Noah have time to dodge. Of course, sharp senses have more benefits than that. Ignoring Yurek's solemn expression, Noah raised his head and looked at the sky. I can even sense when an uninvited guest is approaching. Hearing this, Yurek seemed to have noticed something and suddenly raised his head to look at the sky. Kaboom! The next moment, a fierce bolt of lightning struck down from the thunderclouds. Chapter 549. Boom! Along with a loud clap of thunder, a bolt of lightning struck down from the thunderclouds above Mount Vesuvius. It tore through the air and space, and in a flash, it abruptly struck the ground. Noah and Yurek activated their own speed almost at the same time. One turned into a phantom under the power of the Phoenix incarnation, and the other turned into lightning under the power of the lightning spark. At the same time, they retreated violently to the rear. Immediately, the thunder fell between the original position of Noah and Yurek. Boom! With an astonishing loud noise, the thunder directly hit the ground, exploding a circle of violent impact wind, scattering gravel in all directions like a tornado. Relying on the authority of the speed, Noah and Yurek both avoided the blow unscathed. They removed the authority of the speed at a distance from the place where the thunder fell, revealing their figures and staring at the center of the impact wind. Haha, over there, a sweet voice laughed as it reverberated. As expected of the two kings of today's world. Not only were they able to detect the enemy's approach in time, but they were also able to dodge the attack. More importantly, both of them are users of Godspeed. It feels as if they were destined to meet each other. With such a sentence, in the center of the gradually dissipating impact wind, a blurred and hard-to-see fog appeared at the place where the thunder fell to the ground. Noah and Yurek both saw it. In the thick fog, there was a beautiful white horse. On the beautiful white horse, the god ancestor named Genivia was sitting on it, nestling on the chest of a person. It was a fully armored knight wearing a full set of white heavy armor. Even his helmet happened to cover his face, making it impossible for others to see his face. Not a single part of his body was exposed to the air, and he was holding a spike-shaped spear in his hand. The moment they saw the knight, both Noah and Yurek's bodies suddenly surged with majestic power, and their bodies and minds naturally entered the state of battle. There was no doubt that the knight was a god. Oh! Yurek said in a tone as if he had met an acquaintance. Finally appeared. Guinevere. Noah first glanced at Guinevere, and then turned his eyes to the knight in full armor. So, that is the patron of Guinevere that Alice mentioned, right? Master Noah already knows this much. Perhaps Guinevere heard Noah muttering to himself. Like a child, Guinevere leaned in the arms of the knight and spoke in a coquettish tone. Yes, my uncle is the patron of this world to protect me. Sure enough. If it weren't for the existence of this so-called guardian, it would have been impossible for Guinevere to break through Yerek's great labyrinth by himself. Guinevere, the god ancestor, could break through Yerek's great maze, just like Noah did. Instead of breaking through the maze, he broke into the thunderclouds and went directly to the top of the volcano. Only a god who also had the power of thunder and lightning could do that. It seems that I didn't use the fog to cover the top of the volcano, but chose to use the thunderclouds as an obstacle. It was my miscalculation. Yerek looked at the knight behind Guinevere provocatively. It's been a long time, Lancelot. Lancelot. Noah's eyes suddenly focused on the knight. Lancelot. In Celtic mythology, he was one of the best and most outstanding knights of the Round Table led by King Arthur of ancient Britain. In terms of legend and martial arts, he was not inferior to King Arthur. He was also known as the Knight of the Lake, Lancelot. The patron of Guinevere was that legendary knight. Or rather, the patron saint of Guinevere was Lancelot, and from a certain point of view, he could not have been more suitable. After all, in the mythology, Guinevere was King Arthur's wife, and Lancelot was one of the most outstanding knights around King Arthur. These two people had an affair and betrayed King Arthur together. From this point of view, Lancelot should be the patron of Guinevere, which was the most appropriate result. In such a case, the voice of the knight riding a handsome white horse Lancelot sounded from the heavy helmet. Sorry, I came uninvited, but this is also the request of my beloved daughter, and I can't refuse. With such a sentence, Lancelot turned his horse's head, as if ignoring Noah, and confronted Yerek face to face. He showed his back to Noah in a dignified manner, as if he wasn't worried that Noah would launch a sneak attack. Although that was the case, Noah really wouldn't launch a sneak attack. His outstanding sensing ability told Noah that even if his back was exposed, Lancelot was still paying attention to him. As long as Noah attacked, then, the spear in his hand should instantly pierce through space and pierce Noah's chest, right? The knight in front of him really lived up to his reputation in the myths. However, for some reason, Noah felt that there was something wrong with the god in front of him. That feeling was difficult to express. Under Noah's sensing ability, Lancelot's existence was very strange, as if he wasn't here. It was really strange to the extreme. Just when Noah felt that something was wrong with Lancelot, who was confronting Yerek, raised his head and let out a surprised and exclaimed voice. Have you noticed my true face? This sentence was obviously directed at Noah. Uncle, please be careful, Guinevere, who was nestled in Lancelot's arms, suddenly said. Although that lord has only been a god-slayer for a short time, but he is the most special one among all the god-slayers. Not only does he have the power not inferior to any god-slayer or god of disobedience, but he also has the same wisdom as Lord Alexander. He is a very strong opponent. Is that so? Hearing Guinevere's warning, Lancelot once again turned his horse's head and faced Noah, turning his back to Yerek. Seeing this, Yerek's expression sank. He wasn't angry, but he became dignified. Obviously, Yerek had the same feeling as Noah just now. Even if Lancelot showed his back to him, there wouldn't be any flaws. Since even my beloved daughter said so, Godslayer, it seems that you do have the power to satisfy the surging passion in my heart. If possible, I really hope to exchange blows with you and wield my spear to my heart's content, Lancelot said. However, I'm just a guardian, just the shadow of my beloved daughter. I can't have such willfulness. Shadow. Noah suddenly froze. Intuition told Noah that Lancelot's words were the key to understanding why his form of existence was so strange. Unfortunately, now was not the time. Nay. Suddenly, the majestic white horse under Lancelot let out a long neigh, stomped on the ground, and rushed in the direction of Yerek. That speed was more than 100 times faster than an ordinary horse. Then, Lancelot, who was sitting on the horse, raised his spear, and suddenly stabbed in the direction of Yerek. Yerek's expression changed, and he didn't hesitate to activate seraphic speed and disappeared on the spot. However, the tip of Lancelot's spear seemed to have extended at an unimaginable angle, and with a twist, it pierced in another direction. Rip! With such a sound, Yerek suddenly appeared in front of the tip of the spear that suddenly twisted in direction, and the clothes in front of him were already torn. That was the secret of the martial arts to break seraphic speed. Using the mind's eye to see through seraphic speed, capture it in the smallest and shortest path, and predict the opponent's next move to launch an attack. Noah had already seen this technique from Tony once, and this was the second time he witnessed it with his own eyes. If Yerek hadn't dodged well, this spear would have been enough to take his life. However, the moment Yerek dodged the spear, Lancelot, who was holding the spear, let go of his hand, and let the spear in his hand shoot out like an arrow. The target was the divine pillar of Hera. Whoosh! With a sharp sound, the sharp spear tore through the atmosphere and landed on the stone pillar. Chapter 550. Whoosh! With a sharp sound, the tip of the sharp spear began to surge with a huge wave of curse power. It wrapped around the tip of the spear and fell on the body of the divine pillar of Hera. Clang! Following the sound of metal colliding, the divine pillar of Hera was cleanly and neatly broken into two sections by Lancelot's throwing spear. Noah and Lancelot, who saw this scene clearly, were shocked at the same time. Then, the huge amount of curse power that was originally gathered on the divine pillar of Hera was distorted. Like magma, it spurted out and soared into the sky. Boom! An extremely huge amount of curse power surrounded by a dazzling green flash rushed into the sky like a torrent, directly dispersing the dark clouds on top of Mount Vesuvius. Like a ripple, it spread in all directions. Buzz! However, soon, these ripple-like huge curse power that spread out stagnated again. It gathered at a faster speed than when it surged out and gradually formed a huge figure. It was a dragon. A giant dragon with bat-like wings, short limbs reminiscent of a lizard, a head shaped like a crocodile, and sharp teeth arranged neatly like swords in its bloody mouth. Whoosh! The huge dragon wings were spread out, and the giant dragon looked down arrogantly. Its scales glowed like emeralds, and its eyes flashed with a cold fierceness. Roar! The roar that shook the air lingered in the sky above Mount Vesuvius and echoed. It's a success. Guinevere, who was sitting on Lancelot's horse, let out a joyful sound. Because the divine pillar of Hera transformed the essence of the earth in Nabali into curse power. Now, after Uncle's destruction, the essence of the earth condensed in the divine pillar of Hera, formed a winged serpent, as we imagined, and appeared on the ground. A brave and mighty dragon. Seeing it, my blood began to boil. Lancelot looked up at the sky, and his hand that was holding the spear that had returned to his hand trembled with excitement. The target of our steel hero, the dragon, is right in front of us. I really want to wave the spear in my hand and show off my bravery. Hearing the conversation between Lancelot and Guinevere, Noah and Yerek suddenly looked up at the giant dragon soaring in the sky. I see, Yerek muttered to himself. Their goal is not the divine pillar of Hera at all, but they want to use the power of the divine pillar of Hera to draw out the essence of this land and transform it into a mythological beast. So the divine pillars of Hera can still be destroyed. Noah laughed bitterly. If I had known earlier, I wouldn't have gone through so much trouble. However, whether it was Noah or Yerek, both had a question. That is, Geniwea gathered the essence of this land through the divine pillar of Hera. Then, by destroying the divine pillar of Hera, it released the essence of the land to form the divine beast. The answer soon appeared in front of Noah and Yerek. As if it wanted to echo the roar of the giant dragon in the sky, a terrifying spell suddenly emerged from a corner of Mount Vesuvius without the slightest warning. Noah and Yerek simultaneously looked in the direction of the emergence of the spell. Noah could clearly feel that at the same time that the spell appeared, his body, which was originally filled with power because of Lancelot's appearance, seemed to have entered a state of excitement. The power rapidly emerged from all parts of his body and filled his whole body. Then, there was no doubt as to what the spell was. In the next second, a figure quietly emerged from the huge spell. Why did I descend here? With golden hair as dazzling as the sun and beautiful eyebrows that didn't make people feel weak, a man wearing a white robe and a cloak converged all the spell around him into his body and walked forward step by step. He raised his head, looked at the sky, and smiled happily. This kind of question isn't even worth asking. Since my enemy, the evil dragon, has appeared here, then why did I descend? Do I still need to answer the question? It wasn't clear if it heard the man's arrogant words, but in the sky, the majestic giant dragon lowered its head and stared at the man as if it had met its natural enemy. It let out a roar that shook the air. Roar! The roar that was full of intimidation was like a storm falling from the sky. It turned into a sound wave that blew down and directly hit the top of Mount Vesuvius, setting off a thick cloud of smoke and dust. In response, the man was not alarmed but delighted, and he even laughed out loud. Are you also excited because you've met your old enemy? Then let's continue our battle in the myths. After saying that, a broad blade suddenly appeared in the man's hand. He pointed at the giant dragon in the sky and issued a declaration. My name is Perseus, a dragon slayer, and also a hero who saves young girls. Evil dragon, bow down under my blade. In Greek mythology, the dragon slayer hero who slayed the snake demon Medusa and also fought against monsters who wanted young girls as living sacrifices on the beach. He finally won and rescued the beautiful princess. As the model of a hero who slays snakes and even dragons, the widely known god of bravery Perseus. The hero god of steel, who had appeared on this land because of the appearance of the dragon, had now appeared in front of everyone. As if there was only the giant dragon left in his eyes, Perseus' body suddenly turned into a flash of light, flew into the sky, and collided with the roaring dragon in the sky. Boom! In a loud noise, the giant dragon let out a shrill scream. Its body seemed to be hit by a flashing gun, and following the impact of the flash, it fell to the edge of the distant harbor. Perseus. Guinevere watched this scene happen, but turned his head indifferently and looked at Lancelot behind him. Uncle, is that famous dragon slayer the king we are looking for? I'm not sure, but the divinity of that hero seems to be slightly different from the king we are looking for, Lancelot said indifferently. No matter what, we have to observe first before coming to a conclusion. As soon as this sentence came out, a sneer sounded. Unfortunately, I don't like to be led by the nose, so let me attack from my side. Hearing this, Lancelot and Guinevere thought of something, but it was too late to react. Boom! All of a sudden, the volcano that everyone was in seemed to be on the verge of erupting. It was also as if something huge was crashing down from the ground, causing it to shake violently. Guinevere's expression changed, and Lancelot's whole body shook. The white horse under him couldn't stand still under the violent shaking, and it kept whining. Noah, who had already noticed something was wrong, jumped into the air before that, and instantly used the incarnation of thunder to turn into a bolt of lightning and flew up. Only Noah, who had superb sensing ability, knew what was going on. Under the volcano, a huge shadow of a human was hitting the ground, making the whole volcano shake violently. It was a shadow with long hair, a figure like a woman's body, but there was a bulge on its back like a wing, and the lower half of its body was not feet, but a fishtail. When Noah sensed its existence, he knew that it was the real thing. Black Prince Yerek had 5 powers. In addition to using a lightning spark and a big maze that could create a maze, Yerek also had the power called Faceless Queen. It was the power that could summon the mermaid queen whose face must not be seen by anyone. Once anyone saw her face, they would disobey their master's orders and directly leave. It was said that this mermaid queen could fly in the sky and move in the water. It had the destructive power to shatter iron towers, and it had the ability to appear and disappear unpredictably. Even the size of its body could shrink and shrink at will. Other than the rule that no one could see her face, she was almost omnipotent. I knew you would come. Did you think I wouldn't be prepared? Yerek's voice slowly sounded. I summoned it from the bottom of the volcano so that I could ambush you. As soon as he finished speaking, the ground at the top of the volcano collapsed. Chapter 551. Rumble. Amidst the deafening tremors, the surface of the summit of Mount Vesuvius collapsed without warning, burying Lancelot and Guinevere who were riding on their panicked white steeds. Lancelot's white horse seemed to be able to fly. However, before the white horse could fly into the sky, the collapsed ground of Mount Vesuvius seemed to have been manipulated. It quickly buried Lancelot and Guinevere, who were riding on the white horse, in the mud and rocks, and brought them into the interior of the volcano at a speed that should have been impossible. Noah, who had flown into the sky in time to avoid the disaster, clearly saw this scene. He didn't think it was a coincidence. Come to think of it, that should be Yerek's trap, right? Mount Vesuvius had been completely transformed by Yerek's great maze. Using this authority, it was easy for Yerek to set up a trap to quickly bury Lancelot and Guinevere on the ground. In addition, he also deployed the Faceless Queen to ambush them underground. This Yerek was indeed a strategist who carried out the style of a strategist even in battle. Noah even suspected that the thundercloud that allowed him and Lancelot to easily break through, enter the summit of Mount Vesuvius, and find Yerek and the god's pillar of Hera might also be Yerek's arrangement. Because if one chose to break through the thundercloud and enter Mount Vesuvius, no matter who it was, they could only choose to land on the summit. In that case, it was equivalent to directly stepping into Yerek's ambush. In fact, Noah had already suspected this when he broke through the thundercloud and entered Mount Vesuvius. After all, if Yerek used the authority of the Great Maze flexibly, it could make people unavoidably fall into the maze and be unable to reach the location of Yerek and the god's pillar of Hera. However, the thundercloud could be directly entered by breaking through. In this way, wasn't the thundercloud a door specially left for others? It was precisely because of this suspicion that Noah had been vigilant and immediately reacted the moment that Faceless Queen appeared. He used the thunder incarnation to fly into the sky and avoid the result of falling into the volcano. Presumably, there should be various traps set up by Yerek inside the volcano, right? And Yerek definitely wouldn't mind counting Noah, Lancelot, and Guinevere as having died in Mount Vesuvius. Just like what Alice said, a guy with a completely twisted personality, but a good brain. If I didn't have the ability to react to unexpected situations at any time, I would probably have to deal with that guy carefully, right? Noah, in the form of a bolt of lightning, overlooking the crater of Mount Vesuvius that had been completely buried because of the collapsed ground, and sneered in his heart. However, as the saying goes, courtesy demands reciprocity. Since you've left me alone outside, I won't be polite. After saying that, Noah, who had transformed into a bolt of lightning, soared into the sky and swept across the horizon. At the same time, the sky that had just been cleared by the dissipation of the thundercloud was once again filled with the sound of air vibrations. Dark clouds suddenly emerged, and it didn't take long for the sky above Mount Vesuvius to be covered. Rumble. Lightning flashed and thunder roared in the dark clouds at the same time. The next moment, a huge bolt of lightning violently flashed out from the clouds, rubbing against the air. While the dazzling lightning illuminated the entire space, it struck down and landed on Mount Vesuvius. Boom! The crater of Mount Vesuvius, which had just been buried, reappeared with a deafening bang under the direct impact of the huge bolt of lightning. The soil and rock scattered in all directions, and then fell one by one into the crater of the volcano, accompanied by the thick bolt of lightning, filling the entire interior of the volcano. Boom! The entire Mount Vesuvius shook violently at this moment, and a bone-chilling sound came from inside. It was as if the volcano was really about to erupt, causing continuous tremors. Seeing this, Noah, who had turned into lightning and blended into the dark thundercloud, secretly laughed in his heart. As the king of deicide and a famous god, this level shouldn't be enough to kill you. So, try your best to survive. After he finished speaking, Noah ignored the shaking Mount Vesuvius, which was on the verge of collapse due to the huge bolt of lightning, and rushed out from the slowly dissipating thundercloud toward the edge of the distant harbor. Roar! Before he reached the edge of the harbor, Noah heard an earth-shattering dragon roar. However, this roar was not filled with intimidation or majesty, but with endless pain and mournful feeling. Hearing this roar, Noah's heart tightened. There was no doubt that it was the roar of the dragon formed by the essence of this land because of the divine pillar of Hera. The sound was so miserable, that dragon should have been severely punished by Perseus, right? After all, even if it was a mythological beast formed by the essence of the earth of Nabali, it was only a beast of the gods that appeared in myths. It was a great enemy to humans, but to gods, although it could not be said that it was powerless, it had almost no resistance. This could be seen from the fact that Noah could control the mythological beast formed by the stone of Gorgon. If he did not stop it quickly, that dragon would definitely be slaughtered by Perseus. That was a mythological beast formed by the essence of this land. If it was killed by the natural enemy of dragons and snakes, the god of steel, this land would never be able to recover its essence, and it would become a land of death and wasteland. Thinking of this, Noah sped up and flashed through the sky at a speed that could barely be seen by the naked eye. With bursts of thunder, he came to the edge of the harbor. At this time, Noah saw it. Near the coast, a dragon was lying on the ground, covered in wounds and blood. One of the dragon's horns on its head was directly broken, and its neck was almost cut off. Only less than a third of it was barely connected to its body. It was extremely miserable and dying. On the other side, a man dressed in an ancient style seemed to be deliberately prolonging his last attack to emphasize his magnificence. He held a large saber in his hand and charged toward the giant dragon. He mercilessly slashed at the giant dragon's broken neck, where only 1/3 of the giant dragon's body was left. At this critical moment, Noah directly removed the thunder incarnation, allowing his body to revert back to his human form from the state of lightning. Immediately after that, he immediately activated the phoenix incarnation. His body turned into a phantom, as if directly integrated into the space, and disappeared. Almost at the same time, Perseus, who was slashing at the dragon's neck, had a change in his expression. He suddenly stepped on the ground and stopped his body with a loud bang. Who? Then, a figure flashed in front of Perseus and threw a punch. With a gust of wind, it bombarded in the direction of Perseus. Oh! Perseus cried out in surprise. However, he calmly tapped the ground with the tip of his foot. His body gently leaped up and landed on the ground. He stabilized his body and raised his sharp and joyful eyes. He looked straight at the figure that had suddenly appeared in front of him. You are not an ordinary human, right? Hearing this, Noah did not answer. Instead, he glanced at the dying dragon behind him who was still trying to stand up from the ground. He was speechless. You're really ruthless, dragon slayer hero. I'm not so willful as to allow myself to be merciful to my former enemy. Perseus said as if it was a matter of course, but an expression of interest appeared on his sunny face. You, who just used the same power as God, should be the current God Slayer, and that power seems to have a familiar aura. Familiar aura. Noah frowned. What does this mean? In addition to power, there seems to be another aura on your body. Perseus looked up and down at Noah, then said with some surprise. However, this aura is not as familiar to me as your power. Instead, it's a little annoying. It can only be an aura closely related to the dragon snake. No, it should be above that. God Slayer, do you have a close relationship with the goddess of earth? Chapter 552. You have a close relationship with the goddess of the earth. Noah narrowed his eyes and met Perseus's gaze. Are you talking about Athena? Athena. Perseus's eyes lit up, and then he laughed happily. So that's how it is. Do you still have an extraordinary relationship with that goddess? In Greek mythology, Perseus chopped off the head of the snake demoness Medusa and offered it to the goddess of wisdom, Athena. This was a very famous story. However, Athena and Medusa were actually the same existence as the Trinity. That is to say, Athena was Medusa, and Medusa was Athena. And as the steel hero who achieved great things by slaughtering the serpents, he was undoubtedly the enemy of Athena, the goddess of the serpents. No matter which divinity it was, which origin, Perseus in front of him had an inseparable relationship with Athena. In other words, the so-called annoying aura that Perseus felt on Noah was probably the aura of Athena. Thinking of this, Noah took out a badge made of obsidian. For a moment when he saw this badge, Perseus's eyes narrowed, and he put on a fake smile. Young man, you seem to have something interesting. And unlike Perseus. Behind Noah, the dying dragon lying on the ground seemed to have a completely different reaction to the badge in Noah's hand, and it let out a slightly happy low cry. Hum. At this time, the stone of Gorgon in Noah's hand trembled and emitted a faint light. Roar. The dying dragon immediately regained its spirit and let out a loud dragon roar, and then its whole body emitted a faint light, and it directly turned into a blue light, and flowed into the stone of Gorgon. After a while, Nabali, who had turned into a giant dragon, merged the essence of the entire earth into the stone of Gorgon. At this moment, Noah felt that the power hidden in the stone of Gorgon seemed to have become stronger. Now, if Athena took back the stone of Gorgon and regained her status as the queen of the Trinity, her power should be relatively enhanced, right? In any case, since the essence of this land has been converted into pure power by the Gorgon stone, then the essence of the earth and Nabali should be restored soon. After all, both Athena and Hera were goddesses of the earth, and the symbol of the earth goddess was the snake. Being absorbed by Athena's snake was equivalent to the land falling under Athena's control. As the goddess of the earth, Athena would also give the corresponding blessings, so that the essence of the earth would be fed back to the earth itself, and there would be no sequelae. Noah heaved a sigh of relief and put the Gorgon stone back into his pocket. He looked up at Perseus, who was watching the scene unfold with a smile on his face, but did not stop it, and said, "You appeared on the ground because of the appearance of the enemy dragon. Now that the enemy is gone, you should also return to the myths. It seems unlikely that such a thing will happen. I am a hero, and the people will look forward to the activity of heroes, and they like the deeds of heroes. Heroes will also fight for the people who worship them and show them their bravery. How can I leave before I am fully active?" Perseus suddenly smiled. "God-slaying warrior, you have taken away my active stage, and you are also Athena's messenger. Give me a battle where I can show my strength. I am not the messenger of Athena, I just have an ill-fated relationship with her." Noah sighed. "In that case, can you give up the battle and return directly to the myths? There is only one way to let us return to the myths, and that is to eliminate the body that we appear on the ground. Unless you defeat me, even if I want to return, it will not be possible. Perseus raised the sword in his hand, as if he was acting in a stage play, and deliberately said beautiful words. Since ancient times, humans have had the habit of praying for the blessings of the gods. However, only a very small number of lucky people can receive the blessings of the gods. However, you people who kill gods forcibly seize the power of the gods who can grant human protection. This is a great disrespect. I will definitely cut you down with my sword. This is my duty as a hero. Without giving Noah a chance to reply, Perseus' body suddenly turned into a light shadow, like a stream of light, and suddenly rushed in the direction of Noah. However, when Perseus rushed in front of Noah, Noah suddenly disappeared like a mirage, leaving only an afterimage. Swish! Perseus' sword directly slashed down, cutting the afterimage left by Noah like a fog and dispersing it. Suddenly, Perseus let out a cry of surprise. With the sword in his hand, he jumped and left the place. Who? At the same time, a figure suddenly appeared and punched at the place where Perseus was originally standing. Because Perseus's backward leap missed, he disappeared again. The God Slayer. Your feet are really fast. And this power is really familiar. Perseus shouted. As he shouted, he kept jumping, as if he was avoiding something. He dodged left and right, and he never stayed in the same place for too long. Every time Perseus jumped away, an illusory figure would appear near the place where he was originally standing and punch at Perseus. After hitting the air, the figure would disappear again. Obviously, Noah was using the incarnation of the phoenix to enter the world of God's speed. He launched a fierce attack on Perseus at a speed that even the gods couldn't keep up with. However, Perseus, as the hero of steel, was not to be trifled with. Even if his eyes and body couldn't keep up with Noah's speed, he still noticed Noah's attack and carried out a small range of dodging. At the moment of the attack, Noah still had to remove the phoenix incarnation and withdraw from the state of God's speed. It was at this moment that Perseus could barely dodge, but in the end, he still looked a little embarrassed. However, as his figure became more and more embarrassed, Perseus' eyes became brighter and brighter. In the end, he even laughed out loud. This power, I finally recognize it. It is the power of my old friend, the god of victory named Welslana. No wonder it is so familiar. The God Slayer, your luck is very bad. With such a sentence, a light will like the sun appeared behind Perseus, blooming with dazzling brilliance. Whang! Under the dazzling light, Noah, who had disappeared, suddenly appeared from a corner with a shocked expression on his face. At this moment, Perseus, who was holding a saber, flashed and appeared in front of Noah with a victorious expression on his face. I see you. The God Slayer. As soon as this voice sounded, the saber in Perseus' hand turned into a flash of light and slashed through Noah's chest. Poochie! In the tearing sound, Noah, who had jumped back without anyone noticing, directly splashed out a burst of red blood from his chest. A huge hideous wound also appeared on his chest. Pain attacked Noah's mind. Feeling the sharp pain from the front, Noah clenched his teeth tightly and stepped back to avoid the fatal injury at the last moment. His toes touched the ground repeatedly, pulling a distance away from Perseus. Oh! You dodged. Perseus' voice calmly sounded. As expected of the God Slayer who even usurped the power of my old friend, the god of victory who had never tasted defeat. Looking at the calmly smiling Perseus, Noah covered the wound on his chest. While his palm was dyed red, his cold eyes were cast on Perseus. What did you do to me? At the same time that the light will appeared behind Perseus, Noah, who had entered the world of God's speed, discovered that in his heart, the outline of the stone plate connecting the 10 avatars had some changes. The pattern representing the Phoenix avatar actually dimmed at that time. In other words, Perseus had nullified Noah's Phoenix avatar. What the hell is going on? Could it be that this was Perseus's authority? Chapter 553. Noah really didn't expect that Perseus could actually nullify his power, causing him to withdraw from the world of God's speed. Noah, who hadn't recovered from the difference in the flow of time between the two worlds, was directly hit by Perseus' blade. If he hadn't whipped his body at the critical moment and made his body take a step back to avoid the fatal injury, Noah wouldn't have just had a hole in his chest, but his entire body might have been cut in half. But, how did Perseus do it? Perseus was very famous. Almost everyone knew a little about the legend of him killing Medusa. Naturally, Noah wouldn't miss out on his knowledge. But in his memory, Noah didn't find any records of Perseus being able to nullify the power of others. In other words, Perseus shouldn't have the power to nullify the power of others. Then what was going on? I've said it before, it's just that you're unlucky. Perseus raised the sword in his hand and pointed it at Noah. The expression of victory on his face became even more intense. God Slayer, there's no harm in telling you. Like Athena, who has a deep relationship with you, I also have another divinity. That's also my other name. Mitra. Perseus smiled meaningfully. For you, who has usurped the power of my old friend, Welslana, this should be a name that you don't know, right? Mitra. Noah was stunned at first, then his gaze froze. Mitra. Noah naturally knew this name. Because that was the person that Welslana, whom Noah killed, served, the master of the undefeated war god. Welslana was actually a god with a complicated origin. This god of victory, who was known as the undefeated god of victory, belonged to the ancient Persian god of light and contract, Mitra. It was said that when Mitra, the guardian of light, punished sinners who broke the contract, he would often transform into a pitch-black boar and smash the sinners who broke the contract. The mountain boar was one of Welslana's 10 incarnations. As the god of war who served Mitra, Welslana and Mitra shared a common attitude. For Mitra was the root of Welslana. Mitra was originally a war god, but as time passed, his divinity as the god of light and contracts grew stronger and stronger. In the end, he was worshipped as the sun god by his believers, bringing light to the people, but lost his divinity as a war god. And the one who inherited Mitra's fading god of war was Welslana. According to legend, Welslana was born from the soul of Mitra. It was just like in Greek mythology when Zeus swallowed Metis into his stomach. As a result, Metis's daughter, Athena, was born from Zeus' head and became the goddess of wisdom who inherited Metis's wisdom. Similar to this legend, when Welslana was born from Mitra's soul, he inherited Mitra's war god and replaced Mitra in conquering the enemy gods, becoming the undefeated war god. In other words, instead of saying that Welslana was Mitra's subordinate, it was better to say that he was Mitra's avatar, son or other half. Therefore, Welslana was the guardian of light like Mitra. He could also summon the horse that carried the sun, control the flames from the sun, and even transform into the pitch-black boar that Mitra once owned, becoming synonymous with destruction. Under such circumstances, as Mitra's subordinate, doppelganger, son, or the other half of the god of war, Welslana's power was the power of Mitra, who had not yet lost the divinity of the god of war and had passed on the power of the god of war to Welslana. This way, Perseus, who also had Mitra's divinity, could naturally seal Noah's phoenix avatar and make the phoenix's ability ineffective. After all, Noah's phoenix was originally Welslana's power. He was too careless. Noah secretly sighed in his heart, but he let go of the hand that was covering his chest, exposing the huge wound on his chest to the air. Noble and smart, elegant and beautiful, I praise thy life, here is one with nature, the brand new language turned into power, urging the curse power in Noah's body, making the stone plate in Noah's heart turn and point to the pattern of Delph. Whang! Suddenly, a burst of starlight emerged from all parts of Noah's body and covered Noah's body. Under this burst of starlight, the wound on Noah's chest quickly healed at a speed visible to the naked eye, and in less than 3 seconds, it completely disappeared. Seeing this, the smile on Perseus' face slightly froze. If it wasn't for the cut marks on Noah's chest and the blood on his hands and clothes, Perseus would even doubt whether his attack had caused any harm to Noah. Then, Noah slowly opened his mouth. "You said that my luck is very bad, right?" Perseus was suddenly stunned. Ignoring Perseus's performance, Noah raised his head and the corner of his mouth curled up into a sneer. "Then, now, let me return this sentence to you." When this sentence was still spreading in the air and drilled into Perseus' ears, Noah's body suddenly surged with a huge amount of curse power. His body turned into a phantom, and as if he had merged into space, he directly disappeared. That was the power of the phoenix that should have been sealed by Perseus. What dash? Perseus was shocked, but a strong sense of crisis immediately emerged in his heart. However, if he reacted at this time, how could he catch up with Noah who had used God's speed? Thus, Noah suddenly appeared in front of Perseus, and as Perseus's expression changed drastically, he turned around and kicked out. At the same time that he kicked out, Noah suddenly activated the phoenix's God speed. Who dash? What was originally an ordinary whip kick immediately turned into a lightning-fast attack, ruthlessly whipping Perseus's waist. Ping dash! A loud muffled sound was heard. Goo dash! Perseus spat out a bitter cry. His body was ruthlessly whipped by the whip kick. Like a kite with a broken string, he couldn't control his body and flew backward. He crashed to the ground not far away and rolled a few times before stabilizing his body. Why? Perseus held his waist and knelt on the ground with one knee. The cheerful smile that was always on his face had disappeared, and it was replaced by a puzzled and twisted expression. I should have sealed the power of my old friend. Because, you're unlucky. Noah retracted his leg and looked in the direction of Perseus. He sneered. That is no longer the power of your old friend, but my power. That's right. That was no longer Wellislana's power. Noah's physique had absorbed Wellislana's power and completely turned it into his own. Therefore, even if Perseus could use Mitra's divinity to seal Wellislana's power, he couldn't seal Noah's power. Of course, it would be a lie to say that there was no effect at all. The relationship between Wellislana and Mitra was too deep. Even he was born in Mitra's soul, and his power was inherited from Mitra's god of war. Therefore, even if Wellislana's power had become Noah's power, the origin of this power still came from Mitra. This also caused Perseus to be unable to completely seal the power that Noah absorbed from Wellislana, but he could still cause it to fail for a very short period of time. Because of this, when Noah used the phoenix's avatar at the beginning, it suddenly failed and gave Perseus the opportunity to take advantage of it. According to Noah's judgment, Perseus could make the phoenix's avatar lose its effectiveness for about 3 seconds. Moreover, Perseus could only make the phoenix's power, which was completely inherited from Wellislana, lose its effectiveness for 3 seconds, but he couldn't make Noah's other avatars that were derived from the fusion lose their effectiveness. Then, as long as he used the avatars other than the white horse and the phoenix, Perseus would be helpless. At that moment, Noah cancelled the phoenix and switched to the thunder. As Perseus's pupils shrank, Noah raised his hand and waved it heavily in Perseus's direction. Boom! A bolt of lightning fell from the sky and landed on Perseus's body. Boom! The sound of thunder shook the sky. Chapter 554. Beep! 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 On the ground struck by the lightning that fell from the sky, traces of electric arcs crawled like snakes. They constantly flowed around, stirring up frequent electric currents that made one's scalp tingle. After these electric currents on the ground crawled aimlessly for a while, they converged on Noah's body as if they were guided by an invisible hand. They followed Noah's feet, climbed up his body, and mixed with the electric arcs on his body, making the electric currents even more powerful. Just as Guinevere said, Noah was extremely special among all the god-slayers. Among other things, Noah had an advantage that the other god-slayers did not have in terms of the enhancement of their authority. Pandora said that the god-slayers could only become stronger in actual combat. The more battles they fought, the more opportunities the authority of the god-slayers had to be enhanced. That was why Warban and Luohao, who had lived the longest, were so ridiculously powerful. After all, Warban and Luohao, who had lived for at least 200 years, must have fought many battles. Coupled with the fact that the god-slayers could only become stronger in actual combat, it was natural that the two demon kings would be so strong. Compared to the other god-slayers, apart from being able to become stronger in actual combat, Noah's authority had also been integrated into his authority. Even when he wasn't fighting, Noah's authority would slowly increase. That was to say, Noah was becoming stronger almost all the time. Of course, the increase of his authority was one thing, and whether he could master these authority was another. In this regard, Noah could only gradually master his authority through actual combat. After 3 months of battles, Noah had a full grasp of the authority of the 10 incarnations. Just like the current thunder incarnation, Noah, who used this incarnation, could retract the thunder and lightning used to attack before and add it to the newly added thunder and lightning, making the power of thunder and lightning stronger. This was one of the manifestations of the thunder incarnation being fully mastered. In addition, like the phoenix incarnation, Noah could no longer only use seraphic speed like before, but he could control the activation and deactivation of seraphic speed. By switching seraphic speed on and off, Noah could enter seraphic speed when he wanted to move, and deactivate seraphic speed when he wanted to attack to ensure the accuracy of the attack. Not only that, but during the attack, Noah could also suddenly activate seraphic speed again, turning the launched attack into a seraphic speed attack. In this way, even super-fast attacks in the seraphic speed state could become possible. Although during the activation and deactivation of seraphic speed, there was an extremely short moment when the opponent could take advantage of the opportunity to dodge, it was still better than being unable to attack in the seraphic speed state. The key to this seraphic speed ability lies in the switching between the activated and deactivated state. Now, Noah could also grasp this key point very well, and use the Phoenix incarnation incisively and vividly. The rest of the incarnations were in the same situation, and they had been well controlled by Noah. Even, Noah found a surprise from some of the incarnations. For example, the elf incarnation could not only heal injuries, but also had the hidden effect of restoring spirit and spell power. As for the rest of the clones, they more or less had other hidden effects, which were discovered by Noah. As for what those effects were, it would be revealed later. Noah, who had a strong electric current flowing on his body, looked at the place in front of him where smoke and dust were stirred up by the lightning attack from the sky. A strange light flashed in his eyes. He waved his hand, and a faint spell power turned into a breeze, blowing away the smoke and dust. As a result, a bottomless pit appeared in front of Noah. As for Perseus, he had probably turned into ashes. Noah clearly felt that his attack hit Perseus without any deviation, and he even felt that under the attack of the lightning, Perseus's aura gradually weakened from strong to weak, and finally extinguished like a candle flame. In such a situation, Perseus could not still be alive. However, Noah did not relax at all. In the past 3 months, Noah had also encountered 2 or 3 gods and fought with them. In the end, Noah emerged victorious in every battle against the 2 or 3 gods. But in the end, Noah did not even gain a single authority. That was because when he thought that he had killed the god, the other party escaped with an inexplicable power, and some even directly resurrected. Therefore, Noah did not think that the god was so easy to kill. The most important thing was that Noah still did not feel that he had usurped Perseus's authority. In other words, Perseus was not dead yet. No. Dead should be dead. But if the other party was resurrected, it would not be strange at all. Perseus is also Mitra, and Mitra is the sun god. Noah frowned. Then, Perseus should have the authority of resurrection. Gods who were related to the sun generally had the authority of resurrection. The sun would rise in the morning, bringing light and life to the earth, and then set in the west at night, falling into silence. It could still rise the next day. This phenomenon itself had the meaning of a rebirth. Just like the symbol of the snake that represented the earth goddesses, snakes would hibernate in winter and wake up in spring. They would constantly shed their skin, which meant that they were immortal. Therefore, gods who were related to the sun and snakes could generally be resurrected. It was a violation of the rules. However, resurrection did not mean that he was in perfect condition. Even if he could be resurrected, Perseus should at least be in a seriously injured state. Noah immediately closed his eyes and activated his perception ability. After scanning the surroundings seriously, he helplessly opened his eyes. Did he run away? It was precisely because of this situation that Noah did not increase his authority in the past 3 months. Go back and let Erica and Liliana find Perseus. Also check if Yerek, Lancelot, and Guinevere are dead. Although that was what he said, Noah did not think that these guys would die so easily. Noah understood how difficult it was to kill a god. Noah also understood how difficult it was to kill a god-slayer who shared the same status as a god. In short, whether it was a god-slayer or a god of disobedience, they were a group of guys with extremely tenacious vitality. With such a thought in his mind, Noah maintained the state of thunder incarnation. His body once again turned into a bolt of lightning, flew up, and fled into the distance. At the same time that Noah left, a burst of darkness emerged from the distance and turned into a petite figure. The dark snake eyes stared at the bolt of lightning in the distance, and a faint smile slowly appeared on Athena's face. Only then can you be worthy of being my nemesis. With such a sentence, Athena turned her gaze to the bottomless pit, and the faint smile gradually turned into a sneer. Perseus, that steel that appeared was actually him. No wonder the hatred in this concubine's heart was so strong even before he appeared, to the point that this concubine did not hesitate to join hands with the enemy of fate. That's fine, I'll play hide and seek with you a little. With that said, another burst of darkness emerged from Athena's body and covered her petite body, and then she disappeared. Next, Athena and Perseus, the snake goddess and the steel hero, this pair of mortal enemies, will play a game of cat and mouse in the dark of Nabali. One is a goddess who has lost her symbol and has not regained her identity as the Trinity. The other is a hero who has lost his life, has just been resurrected, and has not regained his peak state. Who would emerge victorious in this game of cat and mouse? Or will it end with no one winning? No one knows. Because of the situation at Mount Vesuvius, Erica and Liliana should not have returned yet. Even if he went back now, he should not be able to see the 2 girls. Then there was no need for Noah to be anxious. On the way back to Diana's old bookstore, he directly cancelled the thunder incarnation. As he walked forward, he took out his phone and sent an email to Alice to explain the situation here and see what Alice thought. To Noah's surprise, when he returned to the old bookstore, a person was waiting for him. It was Yerek. Chapter 555. In the bustling streets of the old city, the noise was like that of a wet market. Perhaps it was because someone had used some sort of barrier or magic around Mount Vesuvius. Looking at Mount Vesuvius from here, Mount Vesuvius still looked the same as before. There was nothing out of the ordinary. Therefore, no one noticed that not long ago, Mount Vesuvius had almost erupted. If someone had noticed, this place wouldn't be as peaceful as it was now, right? In the corner of the old city street, in Diana's second-hand bookstore, a young man with black hair, black eyes, fair skin, a slender figure, and his straight back was standing in front of a bookshelf like an ordinary tourist. He was holding a book and carefully reading it. No one knew that this young man was actually a god-slaying king who could change the situation of the entire world. No one knew that another king was standing at the entrance of the second-hand bookstore, mixed in with the crowd. Looking at the uninvited guest, he didn't say anything. He just lifted his foot and walked into the bookstore. Yerek didn't seem to notice Noah's arrival at all. He continued to stand there and read his book. It was as if he was talking to himself, spitting out such words. Although there's no collectible value, the books here are quite complete. Some of them even record some interesting things, which surprised me. It's a pity that the owner isn't here now. If you want to buy, you'll have to wait obediently, Noah responded as if he was talking to himself. Of course, if it's you, you can actually borrow. After all, it's not the first time. There aren't many things in this world that require me to borrow. At least, it's not something that can be bought with money. Yerek didn't mind Noah's silent mockery and raised his head from the book in his hand. You're finally here. You're much slower than I thought. It can't be helped. Noah leaned against the bookstore counter as if nothing had happened. Even if it wasn't my intention, for the sake of the people of Nabali, I still have to clean up the mess left by someone. You're surprisingly responsible, Yerek said without any comment. He put the book in his hand back on the shelf, then turned around and looked at Noah, who was leaning against the counter with his arms crossed. However, thanks to you, my plan has completely failed. Hearing this, Noah's heart skipped a beat. Needless to say, the reason why Yerek came to Nabali and spent so much effort to steal the divine pillar of Hera was because of Genevia. In fact, Yerek did use the divine pillar of Hera as bait and set up a trap on Mount Vesuvius. Presumably, it was to bury Genevia. But now, it seemed that Yerek's plan failed. Because of Noah's intervention. As far as I know, you don't seem to be on good terms with the god ancestor. I don't believe that you don't know my intention. So, why don't you just watch from the side and come out when everything is over? Yerek said in a cold voice. If it were me, I'd do that without hesitation. It's the easiest and most efficient way. I don't have to waste any extra effort to get rid of my opponent. Isn't that great? Oh. Noah said with a half-smile. Is that what a thief who stole our item should say? At least, I think it's worth it to get rid of a troublesome opponent by sacrificing a useless god relic, Yerek said matter-of-factly. Of course, it's useless to say so much. Since the plan has failed, it'll be difficult to find another opportunity to get rid of Genevia in one go. Saying this, Yerek's tone didn't carry much annoyance. A well-thought-out plan was ruined just like that, causing his sworn enemy to flee, but Yerek didn't seem to be angry at all. Instead, like a robot, he threw the past failure to the back of his mind and began to plan for the future. Should he say that this man was too straightforward? Or was his personality so twisted that he had lost his humanity? Or perhaps, a little of both? Noah could not help but laugh. Are you so sure that your plan can get rid of Genevia? Don't forget that Lancelot is with the god ancestor. If you didn't intervene, the possibility of getting rid of Genevia and Lancelot is more than 90%. Yerek said confidently. Even if my series of arrangements can't do anything to them, they will still be lured into the volcano by me. At the very least, I can still detonate the entire volcano and make it erupt. Lancelot is the hero of steel. Yerek, who did not know what dangerous words he had just said. Fire can forge strong steel, and it can also melt strong steel. If that volcano erupts, even Lancelot would be buried, right? I see, Noah sneered as if he had seen through Yerek's thoughts. Because the last resort was to directly detonate the entire volcano and make it erupt, you naturally prepared an escape route for yourself. It was this escape route that allowed you to survive the final lightning strike I sent to the inside of the volcano and escape, right? You're really smart. You even guessed that. Yerek paused for a moment and then nodded. Yes, that's how I escaped. Lancelot has the authority to control lightning. I guess you can't do anything to him, right? I didn't launch the attack to kill you, Noah said calmly. I was just returning the favor. Yerek was silent for a moment. When he spoke again, his voice was full of mockery. You really are a godslayer. No matter how wise you are, you can't hide your reckless actions. Noah laughed, and his laughter was unusually sarcastic. Please let me return those words to the Black Prince, who didn't hesitate to detonate the volcano in order to bury his opponent. He didn't care about what would happen to Nabali. Yerek was speechless, and his face was full of displeasure. Although they had only met twice, and both times had been very unpleasant, Noah had long seen that this man, Yerek, had a special characteristic. He had always thought that he was different from other godslayers, and was very unwilling to be compared to other godslayers. However, Yerek was still a godslayer. Otherwise, detonating the volcano or something like that was absolutely impossible for ordinary people to think of. Noah did not believe that Yerek was not aware of what he had done. Therefore, Yerek was just running away, stubbornly holding on, and stubbornly refusing to admit it. From this point of view, this man was not straightforward at all. Forget it, that kind of thing is fine no matter what. Noah glanced at Yerek. Tell me why you are here. I don't believe that you came to me specifically to complain to me. Rather than believe that you are here to complain, I'd rather believe that you are here to seek revenge. Although my plan failed because of your interference, it was also my mistake not to consider this possibility. There is no revenge to be sought. Yerek raised his eyes and looked directly at Noah. I just came to ask you, how is Perseus? Guinevere's target was the steel hero, who had appeared this time, Perseus. Yerek's target was Guinevere, and he was also interested in the guy called the Last King. Therefore, for Yerek, Perseus's situation was indeed the most important thing to him. Thinking of this, Noah's eyes turned, the corner of his mouth raised, and he said straightforwardly. Let's exchange information. Ask me a question. Then I'll ask you a question too. Sure. Yerek agreed readily. Let's exchange information. If it were people like Warban, Luo Hao, and Tony, if they wanted to get any information, they would definitely use the most direct means to get it, and would never think of any exchange. In this regard, Yerek had to admit that Noah was indeed different from other godslayers, and would not think of everything in battle. If it was easier to achieve the goal, then there would be no need to fight. This was Yerek's creed. Therefore, Noah's approach was unexpectedly quite satisfactory to Yerek. This man was indeed a strategist. Chapter 556. It was not until it was dark that Erica and Liliana returned. Diana is still at Mount Vesuvius. As soon as she returned, Liliana looked at Noah with a sorrowful expression and complained. In order to cover up the changes in Mount Vesuvius, Diana will be there with the witches of Nabali. She probably won't be back anytime soon. Mount Vesuvius was first completely transformed by the power of Yerek's great labyrinth. Then, because of Lancelot and Guinevere's relationship, the entire crater of the volcano was tightly sealed. Later, it was destroyed by Noah's all-out lightning strike, which almost caused the volcano to collapse. After suffering so many blows, Mount Vesuvius had long changed its shape. It was believed that anyone who lived in Nabali would notice that something was wrong with it. What was more serious was that because of Noah's lightning strike, Lancelot, and Yerek's battle inside the volcano, Mount Vesuvius seemed to have really been activated, entering a stage where it would not be strange for it to erupt at any time. In order to prevent this from happening, and to prevent the ordinary residents from discovering the changes in Mount Vesuvius, Diana led the witches of Nabali to work their day and night in an attempt to cover up all traces. Fortunately, Yurek had already left, and Mount Vesuvius, which had been transformed by the power of the Great Labyrinth, had been restored to its original state. There would no longer be any messy traps, fog, or thunderclouds to prevent others from entering. With the witches of Nabli's ability, they should be able to restore Mount Vesuvius to its original state. I knew it. It's definitely not a good thing when two godslayers clash, Erica said calmly, as if she had already expected this. Fortunately, the battle this time began on the volcano. If it had happened in the city like before, it would have been really troublesome. If possible, I really hope the king can be more mindful of the surroundings, Liliana said in a rare tone of helplessness. Although it is the duty of a knight to assist the king, I really hope that there is less of this kind of aftermath work. Alright, stop complaining. Noah smiled bitterly. That guy Yerek was planning to make the volcano erupt directly. He's already very lucky to be able to stop that. Just like Princess Alice said, the Black Prince's personality is twisted, Erica expressed her opinion. At first glance, he seems very rational, but once he enters combat mode, he will become unscrupulous and carry out the combat process based on tactics. For this, he will not hesitate to use everything around him. He is indeed a god slayer. If this comment was heard by Yerek, he would definitely refute it with all his might, right? Unfortunately, Yerek had already left. According to Yerek himself, he planned to simply give up on sniping Guinevere. The previous careful plan couldn't bury the god ancestor, so there probably won't be any more chances. What I care about now is whether Perseus is the last king that Guinevere is looking for. Although, after getting your information, I already have some guesses, so I won't participate in your game next. After exchanging information during the day, Yurek left such a sentence and left without any reluctance. According to the information Noah received from Yurek, Lancelot would not be able to participate in the battle next. Without the help of the patron saint, Guinevere would not be able to participate in the battle between the god slayer and the god of disobedience. Perseus was in hiding because of his injury. The situation was indeed in Noah's favor. As long as he found the seriously injured Perseus and killed him, this trip to Nabali would be over. However, before that, Noah still had one more thing to do. Recalling the question he asked during the day and the answer Yerek gave him, Noah's thoughts turned sharply. After a while, he made up his mind. Noah turned his eyes to Liliana. You are a witch, and you have mastered many common and convenient witch spells. Can you find Guinevere? Find Lady Guinevere. Liliana was stunned for a moment. After hesitating for a moment, she shook her head. Lady Guinevere is the witch queen, the god ancestor of witches. She must have mastered more advanced witch spells than me and will also have the means to resist witches. With my strength, it will be difficult to find the witch queen. What about Perseus? Noah continued to ask. Can you find a way to find Perseus? I'm not sure. Liliana answered hesitantly. If the hero left Nabali, then I can't do anything, but if he is still in Nabali, I can try. Noah's face relaxed, and the corners of his mouth slowly raised. Then you should be prepared to find Perseus. That guy must still be in Nabali. Why are you so sure? Erica asked rhetorically. In the past, you have defeated several gods, but in the end, they all chose to fly away or directly fall into a deep sleep, waiting for their injuries to recover. Perseus should also know that he is no match for you in a seriously injured state. Leaving Nabali and hiding temporarily to recover from his injuries is the right choice, right? No, Perseus must still be in Nabali. Noah made such an assertion directly. For many gods of disobedience who have been swallowed by madness, retreating to recover from their injuries is definitely not a shameful thing, because after recovering from their injuries, they can carry out a fierce battle again. This is the value of the gods of disobedience. But Perseus, the god of disobedience, in addition to his usual battle lust, also attaches great importance to his identity as a hero. Therefore, he can allow himself to be defeated or even retreat, but he absolutely will not allow himself to fly away and escape from the battlefield. As a mythical hero, Perseus indeed had an extraordinary heroic spirit. He would not mind a temporary defeat, let alone retreat. However, in today's confrontation, Noah also saw that this so-called hero was extremely narcissistic. For Perseus, it was okay to be defeated or to retreat, but directly escaping should be unbearable for Perseus, right? Therefore, Perseus would definitely make a comeback. The problem was whether Noah would find Perseus before he recovered from his injuries and finish him off cleanly, or wait for Perseus to recover before appearing in front of Noah and starting a new battle. In other words, even if Perseus is recuperating, he will definitely hide in some corner of Nabali and will never escape from Nabali. Erica understood. Because Nabali is the battlefield that Perseus thinks of, right? That's right. Noah shrugged. Since we already know this, let's hurry up and find Perseus and get rid of him before he recovers from his injuries. Oh. Erica smiled teasingly. Don't you think this is despicable? We fought head-on, and I was the one who caused his injuries. I was just looking for the prey that I had injured and killed him. How is that despicable? Noah waved his hand. Besides, I can't do something as tiring as wait until the opponent recovers before having a fair fight. It's fine if it's another opponent, but this time, the opponent is the god of disobedience. For these gods, if we don't seize any opportunity to defeat them, we are simply letting them go on purpose. This is no different from insulting them, isn't it? Erica and Liliana both nodded in agreement. I will find God Perseus. Liliana vowed, but she soon had doubts. Then, what about Lord Guinevere? Don't worry. Noah showed a meaningful smile. If we want to find the mouse hiding in the dark, we can only let the cat, who is also good at moving in the dark. It is most suitable to give the task of finding Guinevere to her. Hearing Noah's words, Liliana was still puzzled, but Erica seemed to have thought of something and smiled sweetly. Soon after, Liliana returned to her room and began to make preparations. Erica also went to help. Looking at the backs of Erica and Liliana, Noah smiled, got up, and walked out of the used bookstore. Chapter 557. The bright moon hung high in the night sky, surrounded by stars, like a huge painting, very beautiful. The night view of Nabali was famous all over the world. It was not surprising that there would be such a beautiful moonlit night. Although the residents of Naples were used to this night sky, many people still admired it through the windows. Coupled with the beautiful city scenery, it really made many people feel at peace. No one knew that in the dark of this quiet city, a storm that mortals could not get involved in had been going on. Ignorance is bliss. This sentence was well displayed by the residents of Nabali. Under such a night sky, on a bridge near the sea in Nabali, the most orthodox god in the world was here. She was about 10 years old, and her slender body was dressed in a black formal dress. A quiet atmosphere pervaded the air around her as she stood on the bridge. However, she was looking down at the surface of the river below the bridge. Her sapphire-like eyes were filled with a solemn expression. The next second, Guinevere, who was looking at the water under the bridge, spoke softly. Her voice was light and full of frustration. I'm sorry, uncle, Guinevere couldn't find steel. Hearing Guinevere's words, a knight in white armor slowly appeared in front of Guinevere from the water at the bottom of the bridge. Lancelot. The famous knight of the lake in Celtic mythology. This god was not by Guinevere's side now, nor in the water. The image that was being projected now was only Lancelot's reflection. Don't worry, my beloved daughter, we have waited for so long, and now we don't mind waiting a little longer. But, uncle, is Perseus really the king we are looking for? Guinevere looked a little absent-minded. If we finally confirm that Perseus is the king we are looking for, then we naturally don't mind wasting this time, but what if Perseus is not the king we are looking for? Then let's continue our search. Lancelot answered without hesitation. It is your mission to awaken the lazy lord and make him appear on this land once again. My mission is to protect my beloved daughter and wield my spear for my lord and his beloved daughter. Isn't this something that has been decided long ago? Uncle is right. Guinevere sighed. Both Uncle and Guinevere were once followers of the king. If there is any trace of information about the king left in Uncle's and my memories, there would be no need for us to search for the king's whereabouts. In the distant past, before becoming a god ancestor, Guinevere, who was a goddess, and Lancelot, who was a military god, had followed the last king to wander and fight in this land. Logically speaking, Lancelot and Guinevere should know the so-called last king as well as they could. However, the reality was that neither Lancelot nor Guinevere had any memories related to the last king. Because Guinevere had reincarnated from a goddess to a god ancestor, she would lose all memories of her previous life after reincarnation, so there was no clue about the last king. And Lancelot didn't know the whereabouts of the last king because he didn't deliberately remember. As long as I can show the bravery of a military god, I can even forget the name and appearance of the master I served in the past. This is Uncle, right? Hearing Guinevere's sigh, the White Knight said calmly as if it was a matter of course. That's right. Running in the field and waving my spear is what I want. The other things are just trivial things that have nothing to do with me. They are all factors that will make me slow and weak. So, what harm is there in abandoning them? If ordinary humans heard Lancelot's words, they would most likely think it was ridiculous. In order to be able to fight without any distractions, he could abandon all factors that might affect him. He could even control his memories and let them disappear without any reluctance. This was simply a value that humans couldn't imagine. But the so-called God was such a thing. It was an existence that humans couldn't understand at all. Among them, Lancelot, the god of steel who didn't hesitate at all, was the most outstanding. If the man who once fought side by side with me dies on any battlefield, I just have to raise my sword, mourn his death, and feel proud of his glorious passing. Isn't that enough? Lancelot said without confusion. I'm sorry. If it weren't for my stubborn personality, I would have been able to find the monarch I served earlier. No, Uncle, please don't say that. Guinevere looked at Lancelot's reflection on the water with sincere eyes. It is because of Uncle's belief and ego that you can become the strongest of steel, second only to the Lord. It's a pity that I still can't wield my spear to my heart's content and give the enemy a head-on blow. Lancelot's voice was still as calm as ever. If I could use my full strength, the Black Prince who killed the god wouldn't have made things so difficult for you. Hearing this, Guinevere couldn't help but feel annoyed. The last king that Lancelot and Guinevere served was a king with the title of the strongest steel, and also a hero who existed specifically to annihilate the god slayers on the ground. Every time multiple god slayers appeared on the ground, the last king would wake up and annihilate all the god slayers on the ground, burying all the demon kings. The last king had killed countless god slayers until now, and was known as the natural enemy of all god slayers. Facing a god slayer, he had never lost a battle. Serving this king, how could Lancelot, who was second only to him, be weak? If Lancelot could use his full strength, at least he wouldn't be entangled by Yerek like this. Unfortunately, Lancelot couldn't use his full strength now, and couldn't protect Guinevere for a long time. Because the Lancelot that appeared on the ground was not the god of disobedience that violated the myth, but just a god's shadow. When such a sentence echoed and drilled into Guinevere's ears, Guinevere's heart suddenly shrank into a ball, and he suddenly turned his head and looked at the source of the voice. A god appearing on the ground in order to protect a specific person, this is unheard of. Under Guinevere's gaze, a figure gradually came from the other side of the bridge, exposed to the bright moonlight, and entered Guinevere's line of sight. The reason why this incredible phenomenon became possible is that you, who used to be the goddess of earth, cast a great spell on Lancelot, turning the mythical Lancelot into the so-called guardian of the demon queen. The dark and deep pupils met Guinevere's gaze, and the newcomer suddenly smiled. However, because of the inexplicable shackles imposed on him, Lancelot can only appear on the ground for a short period of time when the god of the demon queen is in danger, and he can't use his full strength, am I right? Guinevere couldn't help but take a step back, and his lips trembled slightly. Lord Noah, the newcomer was Noah. It's really very difficult to find you. Noah narrowed his eyes slightly, and looked at Guinevere, who seemed a little flustered because of his sudden arrival, with amusement. If it weren't for the fact that we have an ally who can control the entire dark world, transform into an owl, and freely enter and leave the human world and the underworld, it would be really difficult to find you. In order to find Guinevere, Noah dragged out Athena, who was also looking for Perseus, and asked Athena for help to find Guinevere's location. As the god of earth, Guinevere's hidden means were indeed extraordinary. But after all, the god of earth was only a reincarnation of the goddess of earth who died under certain conditions, and was the existence of the former goddess of earth after she fell. As the current goddess of earth, it was most appropriate for Athena to find goddess Guinevere. And Athena did not disappoint Noah. Almost half an hour after Noah asked for help, she immediately provided the location of Guinevere to Noah. Really, I've been looking for you for a long time. Noah raised his eyes, and a bright light flashed in his eyes. Then, lovely Miss God, how about spending some time with me? Chapter 558. During the day, when he encountered Lancelot on Mount Vesuvius, Noah's excellent perception ability gave him feedback that something was wrong with Lancelot. That feeling was as if Lancelot himself was not there at all. It was very empty and vague. Noah, who was very concerned about this, asked Eurek to tell him about Lancelot's information in exchange for Perseus's information when Eurek proposed to exchange information. As an enemy of Guinevere, Eurek, who had confronted and fought against Guinevere countless times in the past, must have had a lot of dealings with Lancelot. And with Eurek's style, it was impossible for him not to have information about Lancelot. Noah's idea was correct. In the end, Eurek answered Noah's question, and Noah finally understood why Lancelot gave him such a strange feeling. Contrary to the myths, the god who appeared on the ground was the god of disobedience. However, Lancelot was not a rebellious god of disobedience. Instead, he was a god's shadow who could only appear on the ground for a short period of time when his guardian, the demon queen, needed help. Therefore, Noah felt that something was wrong with Lancelot, and Noah could also come to Guinevere so unscrupulously. During the day, in order to shatter the divine pillar of Hera and use the essence of the earth gathered in the divine pillar of Hera to attract the appearance of steel, Lancelot had already appeared for a long time. Therefore, unless Noah intended to attack Guinevere, who was the object of Lancelot's protection, and then stimulate the great protection spell that the goddess of earth once cast on Lancelot, Lancelot would not be able to appear on the ground at will for some time. After getting this information, Noah wanted to find Guinevere and come to Guinevere. Seeing Noah suddenly appear like this, Guinevere panicked at first, then suppressed the panic in her heart, lifted the corner of her skirt, bowed her head, and offered an elegant greeting to Noah. I didn't expect you to come looking for Guinevere in the middle of the night. Guinevere is terrified. Even if you know that it's late at night and there's only you and me here, there's no need to put on an act. Noah crossed his arms and said indifferently. As I said, I just want you to spend some time with me. You don't have to worry that I'll attack you. Once I do, Lancelot will be able to manifest himself with the help of the great spell that's connected to you. What's there to worry about? Upon hearing that, Guinevere calmed down completely. His every move was still elegant, but there was a trace of vigilance in his eyes when he looked at Noah. "So, what do you need Guinevere to do with you, my king?" Noah shifted his gaze to Guinevere with a malicious expression. "Actually, you should have something that I want." Guinevere's expression suddenly changed, and the vigilance in his eyes became stronger. Although Guinevere is just an insignificant god ancestor, after all, she was once the goddess of earth. She doesn't have much attachment to things in this world, so naturally, she doesn't have any valuable items. What does my king fancy? Well, I don't know because I don't know what form it will exist in now. Noah's eyes flickered. But it will respond to me. Gaia and Alea once said that the world would not refuse Noah's request. Under such circumstances, it was impossible to directly bestow power to Noah or grant him protection, but Noah could easily do something as illegal as choosing a timeline at will. So, as an incomplete world, would the world fragment refuse Noah's request? That should be impossible. After all, if that was the case, then the world fragment would return to Noah's hands with just one word from Noah. Why would Noah need to work hard to find it? However, just like those complete worlds, even if the world fragment could not respond to a request that was directly beneficial to Noah, it would at least respond to Noah's call. Since Noah had confirmed that the world fragment was with Guinevere, would the world fragment respond to his call when he was directly face to face with Guinevere? Noah didn't know. But Noah's extraordinary intuition told him that it was possible. "So, did you hear my voice?" As if he was talking to a naughty child who was hiding, Noah spoke in a scolding tone. "If you can hear me, then don't hide anymore. Come out quickly." As soon as he finished speaking. In the vibration of space, a dazzling light suddenly bloomed from Guinevere's body. "What ash?" Guinevere was taken aback. Immediately, as if she had noticed something, her pretty face changed dramatically, and she screamed without caring about her image. "That's impossible." Regardless of Guinevere's scream, the light that bloomed from Guinevere's body gradually converged. Inside, a container that was a little taller than Guinevere suddenly appeared. It was a container that looked like a large cup or vase. The container shone brightly as if it was filled with something, and it overflowed from the top of the container. The overflowing thing was nothing else but spell power. Noah didn't expect Guinevere to have such a thing. However, Noah could clearly see that in the container, there was a piece of soft white radiance. Only half of the feather was floating inside the container. Guinevere seemed to be unable to see the broken feathers. She looked at the container that suddenly appeared, and her beautiful face turned pale. Why? Why did the Holy Grail appear without my call? The sudden appearance of the container called the Holy Grail seemed to have made Guinevere lose her calm, and even made Guinevere forget her usual elegance and shout at Noah. "What did you do? What the hell did you do?" "I didn't do anything," Noah replied bluntly. "It just responded to me." "Impossible." Guinevere shook her head desperately. "This Holy Grail is a divine relic that I, as the goddess of earth, sacrificed my immortal life to create. Only I am the rightful successor of the Holy Grail. How could the Holy Grail respond to you? Although I don't know if this thing called the Holy Grail is the famous holy relic in the Bible, if you feel uneasy about the Holy Grail responding to me, then you can rest assured." Noah curled his lips and smiled. "It's not the Holy Grail that responded to me, but the thing inside the Holy Grail." "The thing inside?" Guinevere was stunned. "Yes, it's the thing inside," Noah looked at Guinevere and said abruptly. "So, sorry, in order to take out the thing inside, this Holy Grail will be temporarily kept by me." Guinevere's heart skipped a beat. Just as she was about to react, in front of her, Noah's figure suddenly disappeared like a mirage. When she reappeared, Noah was already in front of Guinevere, or more accurately, in front of the Holy Grail. Looking at Guinevere's drastically changed eyes, the corners of his mouth curled up. "If I attack you, it will stimulate the great spell that Lancelot used to protect you, forcing him to appear on the ground. So, as long as I don't attack you, but this Holy Grail, then there won't be a problem, right?" After saying that, Noah reached out and took the Holy Grail into his arms. "I'll borrow this thing for now." "Wait!" Guinevere exclaimed. "Wait! King!" However, before Guinevere could shout, Noah held the Holy Grail, entered the seraphic speed world that he had just obtained after using the Phoenix incarnation, and disappeared in place. "No, no." Guinevere quickly closed her eyes and called the Holy Grail, but she couldn't get a response from the Holy Grail. It was fine if it didn't return to Noah's hands, but once it returned to Noah's hands, it was impossible for the world fragment to leave Noah. In this way, the Holy Grail, that was hosted by the world fragment, could not respond to Guinevere's call. At that moment, Guinevere sat on the ground with a completely blank expression. What should I do? Chapter 559. In the quiet and deserted night, a gentle breeze slowly blew past, entering one of the rooms on the second floor of the second-hand bookstore with its windows wide open. It made the curtains move up and down, fluttering in the wind, appearing extremely ethereal and tranquil. Whoosh! A mirage-like phantom suddenly appeared with a strong gust of wind, flashing into the room amidst the violent movement of the curtains, bringing with it a burst of light and shadow. This room was the room Noah lived in on the second floor of Diana's second-hand bookstore. After returning to his room, Noah cancelled the use of the Phoenix incarnation, undid the seraphic speed state, and withdrew from the world of seraphic speed. As soon as he undid the seraphic speed state, Noah felt a slight pain all over his body, making him frown and sigh helplessly. The seraphic speed that surpasses everything really isn't that easy to use. Now, Noah was already able to use the Phoenix incarnation's seraphic speed to the point of perfection. However, no matter how perfect it was, Noah was still unable to completely eliminate the burden on his body from the Phoenix incarnation's seraphic speed state. After all, it was a seraphic speed that no one could surpass. The burden on a human body to display such speed was indeed great. Yerek, on the other hand, was able to use the lightning spark authority to first transform his body into lightning and then enter the state of seraphic speed to put an end to the burden of seraphic speed on his body. However, that kind of risk was actually very high. The effect of being able to turn into lightning seemed very powerful, but in fact, that state's resistance to magic interference was very weak, and it was quite easy to get rid of it. At least, for a god slayer of the same type, as long as he casually used a method to break magic, he could immediately get rid of Yerek's lightning state. Even for humans, if several top magicians were to join forces and use a method to break magic, they could also get rid of Yerek's lightning state. Because of this, Yerek rarely turned into lightning during battle. The unlimited, seraphic speed state of lightning was generally only used for hurrying, and could not really be used to prolong the battle. In other words, that day on Mount Vesuvius, Yerek seemed to have said that his electric petrification was quite incredible, but in fact, it was just a bluff. It was fine to scare people, but he definitely wouldn't dare to use it in a real battle. Just like in the battle between Noah and Perseus, in the process of using seraphic speed, once the Phoenix incarnation was nullified, Noah, who had retreated from the world of seraphic speed, would not be able to adjust to the flow of time around him. Perseus would find an opportunity and almost leave a fatal wound on him. If he exited the God speed world, his body would automatically adjust to the difference in the flow of time between the God speed world and the normal world. However, if he was suddenly forced out of the world of God speed, this adjustment would be ineffective, causing his body to stiffen. the enemy would seize the opportunity and defeat him in one fell swoop. Therefore, Yerek would not transform into lightning and enter the realm of God's speed unless it was a special situation. In other words, for Yerek, the burden of God's speed on his body was still there. Noah was naturally the same. Although Noah's body was still strong because of his regular exercise in the past, no matter how strong he was still a human body. At most, he could extend the time of using God's speed, but the burden still existed. Now, if Noah kept using Phoenix, then 30 minutes would be his limit. Of course, this was a situation of continuous use. Noah could turn off God's speed after using it for a period of time, and then continue to turn it on after his body had slowed down. That way, he could extend the time of using God's speed even more. And this price, compared to the ability to surpass everything, was completely worth it. Noah didn't know that compared to Yerek, he was already very good. It must be known that once Yerek entered the state of God's speed, his body would squeak fiercely for about 5 minutes. Moreover, his brain would cry out in grief to deal with the difference in the flow of time between the God speed world and the normal world. If he used it for more than 20 minutes, then when he stopped using God's speed, Yerek would suffer a discomfort that was 100 times worse than jet lag, and his body would be unable to move. It could be seen that compared to Yerek, Noah's body was still considered strong. So, Noah stood in place, waiting for the slight pain in his body to subside after a minute. Only then did he let out a sigh of relief, picked up the huge container in his hand, and put it on a desk in the room. The golden magic Holy Grail silently blossomed with resplendent light, illuminating the entire dusky room. Inside the Holy Grail, only Noah could see the broken feathers floating in the center, releasing a soft white light. Looking at the world fragment floating inside the Holy Grail, Noah couldn't help but smile. "I finally found you." After saying this, Noah was distressed again. "But, how do I take the world fragment out of the Holy Grail?" Although the world fragment was just floating in the center of the Holy Grail, it was easy to reach in and take it out. If that was possible, Noah would have done it long ago. Similar to Bio's situation, the world fragment was attached to the Holy Grail, instead of being stored inside it. In order to take the world fragment out, either the world fragment itself would have to leave the lodging state, or the Holy Grail would have to be destroyed. Destroy the Holy Grail. Noah frowned and couldn't help but talk to himself. If only gods were so easy to destroy, then that would be great. As a tool that was directly related to God, a god relic was generally indestructible. For example, the Gorgon stone could not be destroyed no matter what. There were also god relics that could be destroyed, like the god of Hera's pillar. However, although these god relics could be destroyed, some would automatically repair themselves, and some would reappear on the ground at a certain time, like the god of disobedience. In other words, even if a god relic could be destroyed, people would only be able to destroy its form, but they would not be able to erase its existence. Was the Holy Grail in front of him the type that could not be destroyed? Or was it the type that could be destroyed? If it was the latter, then Noah would be able to retrieve the world fragment. Of course, if he did that, the Holy Grail, which was extremely famous in the world and sought after by countless people, would also be destroyed. No one knew when it would be repaired or reappear. However, Noah was not pursuing this famous Holy Grail, so naturally, he did not care whether the Holy Grail was good or bad. At that moment, Noah softly chanted a short part of the Spirit of Words. The Lord said, "Sinners will be punished, their backs will be crushed, their bones, their hair, their brains will be dug out, and their blood and mud will be trampled on together." Noah's fifth clone of the 10 clones was the golden wolf. Once this clone was used, it could transform the curse power into a physical form and give Bio's consciousness in Noah's soul as a soul clone, allowing Bio to obtain a physical form and appear on the ground. However, Noah did not awaken Bio, nor did he use the curse power to form Bio's body to make Bio appear. He only turned the stone plate in his heart to the image of the golden wolf's clone. This was also one of the ways that Noah had mastered using the golden wolf's clone in the past 3 months of battle. In this state, although Bo would not be summoned, Noah could use the ability to destroy everything that could only be used when using the golden wolf's clone. Buzz! A beautiful golden light burned from Noah's body like a flame. Raising his hand that was surrounded by golden light, Noah placed his palm that could destroy everything directly on the Holy Grail. Buzz buzz. The beautiful golden light immediately covered the entire Holy Grail. Buzz buzz buzz. At this moment, the Holy Grail seemed to have sensed some danger. The golden light on its body increased greatly, and then it returned to its normal state, allowing Noah's crushing power to cover its body. Under such circumstances, the golden light that could directly shatter an entire mountain or even space itself enveloped the Holy Grail. Unexpectedly, it couldn't even peel off a layer of paint from the Holy Grail. Seeing this, Noah knew. The Holy Grail in front of him was an immortal and indestructible God relic. In other words, destroying the Holy Grail and taking out the world fragment would not work. Sigh. Noah sighed softly and retracted his hand that was surrounded by golden light. I knew it wouldn't be that easy. You're tuning into the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.